everyone. Today is Monday. It is March 21st, 2011. I'd like to call this meeting of the Norfolk City Council to order. This is an open meeting. It's great to see so many of you here tonight. I'd appreciate this every meeting, guys. This is great. Love to see you taking part in what's going on within your city, so welcome. Open meeting, though, and let me remind you, posted in the northwest corner is the actual Open Meeting Act, made accessible to all members of the public. Would you stand with us, join in a moment of silence, and as well the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll continue with roll call.
Coy.
Here.
Lange.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
Clausen. Buren.
Here.
Brenneman.
Here.
Faust.
Here.
Saunders.
Here. All right. First on the agenda, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as was presented to you.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
Motion with a second to approve the consent agenda. If you will please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative.
And next would be a request for approval of the full agenda as before you.
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
We have a motion with a second for approval of the full agenda. Again, if you will please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative.
Okay, and under special presentations tonight, I will look to you, Shane, for a recreation update.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, we're moving forward with the rec plan down there at the Veterans Memorial Park. We got the bids back. DLR's portion of the project received our bids back, which includes the football field itself, press boxes, the concrete, those kind of things. For the most part, that portion of the project, the bids are back and they're favorable, which means they're on target and they're within our budget, what we projected the budget to be. So that's great news. You'll see that recommendation coming forth from DLR next Monday night at a special council meeting. So you'll have the ability to award that contract, the next bid, to the successful bidder. Other than that, I really don't have much else to say about that, and I'd sure be happy to answer any questions that the council may have or any of the audience may have.
Shane, I've had a couple questions thrown at me from some of the citizens. One, they want to know how many Norfolk companies bid on it, because they want to see that Norfolk people get some of the business.
For the DLR portion?
Yes.
Well, help me out, staff. How many did bid on that? Those are...
We don't. It was a lump sum bid with the general contractors, and I don't believe there were any local general contractors that bid on the project.
There were some subcontractors that bid on portions of the project.
Right, but the only...
That were local.
I'm not sure that too many of those were listed on the bid form, though.
No, there was one in particular local contractor for the grading that was listed on there. That was a local contractor. Porter Construction was listed in the bidding document under, I think, each and every general contractor listed Porter for doing the grading.
Good.
And so he's local. So as far as the general, I don't believe there was anyone that bid that.
So there weren't any generals, but I would like to stress that we need to see as many Norfolk merchants as we can. I mean, if their bid's allowed, improved on that and working on that if we can. So.
Sure, that's great. You know, we don't control that completely. The general contractor.
Right. I just want to make it on the air or whatever, that so they maybe tell that there weren't any that bid it, but there are some subcontractors, so they know what the process is. So.
Bet.
So, and then, do you know, are we going to have any subcommittees before that on this, like with the recreation subcommittee or anything?
Before Monday night?
Yeah.
Councilman Murin just asked me that. There is not any scheduled. However, we could schedule one this week yet if that was the elected official's choice. We could have a subcommittee meeting on that.
All right, thank you.
But DLR will be here next Monday night to explain the bids and make a recommendation from their viewpoint.
Any other council with any questions?
Shane, question on the aquatics. We're still moving forward at our anticipated bid date of,
It's at the end of April, beginning of May, Councilman?
okay, we're still on track on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll know more tomorrow. We're meeting with Burbach again for our routine update on the plan approval and design and those types of things, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on then, under presentations this evening, we're going to do a discussion on the insurance options that are going to be before us for consideration. So again, Shane, I will let you take it away and begin
All right,
the discussion.
thank you very much. As the council knows and the community may know, city insurance has been in the news somewhat over the last number of years. Councilman Faust and former Councilman Reeder brought up some concerns, or not really necessarily concerns, some questions, though, some valid questions about city insurance and LARM and how we go about bidding the process, or whether we bid or do not bid. I personally recall a meeting a couple, 3 years ago that we had that question in front of the elected officials, and I think some nice things came out of those questions. First of all, just a recognition that insurance is an important part of the city business. Whether a citizen understands that or not, insurance is a major part of how we protect ourselves as a city and as a community from the many liabilities that we have out there as a community. We're unique. Communities in general are unique because of our far reach. And we have firemen, we have policemen, we have city streets, sewer, I mean, the list goes on and on. So our liabilities are far and wide, and they affect the elected officials, and they obviously affect the general population a great deal. And we have to really think long and hard about our ability to protect the assets that the citizens have given us over the years and will continue to give us in the future. So when those hard questions are asked about bidding and whether you bid or not, you just kind of got to take a little bit of a history, walk down a historical path and understand the processes of what the elected officials that sat in your seats before you in the 70s and 80s experienced and the reasons that pools came about. And one of the major reasons that pools came about in the earlier days, back when I was in high school yet, was the fact that insurance market gets hard and it gets soft. It's cyclic in nature. And back then, when I was just a senior in high school, in fact, in that 85 time frame, it marks me, whether that makes me a young man or an old man, I don't know. It probably depends on who you ask. But the insurance market got really hard. It really did. And we were struggling. It's my understanding. I wasn't here to speak to that, but it was my understanding that we had a heck of a time, if not an impossible time, to grab a hold of insurance for our police officers. If we were able to get any insurance at all, it was in the matter, I remember hearing quotes like, well, we'll give you $50,000 of insurance for $40,000 worth of premium. And that's just because of the liability issues that the private insurers were seeing out there when they looked towards all the liabilities for errors and omissions of their police departments. So those cyclic nature of insurance is something that is hard to really, maybe for the average Joe, including me, to grab a hold of completely and say, oh, wow, is that really true, and does that happen? Well, I'll submit to you, and as you know, most subcommittee elected officials have been through all this presentation before. It is real. In fact, one of the things that came out of our elected officials questioning LARM and questioning the bidding process was a consulting report called the Bearsh Report. We sat for that consulting report here within the last few years, and they highlighted a number of things that we could improve on. And I think, it's important for us to recognize that, because that's an important part of the process that got us here today. I think it brought us awareness. It brought LARM in part anyway, they got a new executive director down there. They have recently have a new third-party administrator that in whole see the insurance process a little bit different than maybe the past administrator did. And that's important, because I think, as you may or may not know, I know a subcommittee of the elected officials know, but for the general citizens, the new third-party administrator has a new plan in place, approved by the LARM board, to move forward aggressively with their insurance plan to make it more marketable and competitive with the private insurers across the state. And that's an important piece. We really were building our book of business. You know, my best friend in the world and blood relative of mine is an insurance man, and he tells me about a book of business that insurance people generate. You know, the more book of business you got, obviously, the healthier your company is. Well, LARM really, in this instance, was building their book of business over the last several years since they've been formed. The company's maturing, the pool is maturing. So the elected officials, as they look forward at this complicated issue, have really got to ask themselves where they want to be. Do you want to be for the community? Do you want to be an owner in a company, or do you want to be a renter of a company? And that's really a fundamental question you have to ask yourselves, in my opinion. You're an owner now. Randy is your representative. You, through the citizens' input as elected officials, direct and can and will have and will direct Randy as your board representative to make decisions. And the one unique thing about having that ability to make decisions like that is when he's sitting on that board representing the community, he is sitting with like people on the board. So it isn't like farmers or construction men or a number of any other occupation out there sitting and talking about all their insurance needs and the differences you could imagine between construction and farming and medical coverage or workman's compensation. It's like communities just like the city of Norfolk across the state of Nebraska that are sitting in a pool. They're generating, their dollars are going to fund the pool, going towards the pool, going for coverage, a self-coverage. They have a boat on that, in that pool, and they're all have similar liabilities. So when you talk about firefighters with one of your sister cities, they know what firefighters do and they know the liabilities that a firefighter has. Talk about police officers, it's the same thing. There's no ambiguity between those definitions and how they're covered and what kind of risk and potentials there are. So when times get tough, elected officials, when times get tough, and they will get tough again, the Burris report, the report that you paid for, said that plainly, said it's with almost certainty that the cycle will change and the market will get hard again. When that happens, then you're going to be, through Randy or whomever you assign to the board, you're going to be in a position to be sitting with sister cities and making decisions together with like concerns and exactly the same sorts of liabilities. So it's really about concepts. It's really about the importance of making those long-term decisions and where you want to be as a community. It's a difficult decision, trust me. I don't envy your decision-making tonight. All I know is from staff's viewpoint, looking this over and being involved with it from day one, we can tell you that the pool gives the marketplace some competitiveness. One of my fears is what happens if the pool would go away? What happens if the city of Norfolk pulls out of LARM and Norfolk, you look at Norfolk and you look at their position in LARM, they're a big city, they're a big brother in LARM, one of the big communities in LARM. So say we pull out of LARM and some of the smaller communities see that and then they get out, and then that destabilizes the pool system, and that makes me wonder what's going to happen for the future. I think it is a big decision for you. Whereas if Norfolk stays in the pool and we keep that pool strong and through JI's aggressive marketing that they've embraced and the board has embraced, they grow the pool, then we win. I mean, we're at a position right now that we've just kind of reached maturity as a pool. So if we continue to move forward and we look at what JI can give us as a third-party administrators, and if LARM holds true on what that board holds true on what they've committed to earlier this month, then we will know the facts. And it's really a matter of, do you want to bid it now? Do you want to bid it in a year? Or do you want to bid it in 3 years? Do you want to be able to look at what the third-party administrators can do for the pool and how the pool's responding to you as a community, and the stability that the pool gives to the insurance market, and you make that big decision, and it is a big decision. Version A, there's 3 versions of the resolution tonight. Version A is the version that city staff would recommend. It's the 3-year commitment version. It gives you the most bang for your buck. There's a $25,000 retroactive premium discount that LARM's provided, not only to us, but any other communities. They just provided it to the community of Hastings. It also gives you the 5% discount for longevity, so 5 plus 3. So there's about $55,000 laying on the table there in version A that is great, goes to our bottom line. Version B gives you the 1-year option, and you've read through those. Gives you the 1-year option. You maintain your stability in LARM for another year. It narrows the 180 days down to 90 days, so you'd be in this position next year in the May and June time frame. You'd be able to bid at that from that standpoint as well, and not lose your equity base in LARM. Version 3 pulls out right now, and you go to bid. You lose all the discounts that are available to you, and you lose that equity position going forward. Now, I'm not by any means not an insurance expert. I'm sure there's lots of smart people in the room that are insurance experts on many sides of this issue, so I'll kind of be quiet unless you have questions for me. But I know we have other staff and we have other folks in the audience that may have some points to consider for the elected officials.
Shane, how many cities across the state, do you know, are participating in LARM?
How many, Jan?
60 cities?
One thing that's a good point, Councilwoman. LARM has a smaller group, but cities aren't the only ones that are in pools. Community colleges are strong in pools. County officials are really strong in pools in Nebraska. Pools across the United States are very sound and very strong. I think the JI guys can quote something, but correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but I thought you said something about 75% of the communities across the 85% of the communities across of public entities across the United States are in a pool. They're in a pool for a reason, because they have that control, they have a voice, they're owners, they have stability, they have competition, they have all of those things. So when you look at it across the board, maybe not the cities in Nebraska necessarily aren't in great numbers in the pool currently, but with the things that JI and LARM's board are considering, their plan is to grow that pool. And I think they'll be very successful because they're going to be competitive. They're going to be competitive from this moment going forward. You're going to see that competition. It's going to reflect in your premiums. We got a great loss ratio here in the city of Norfolk for a lot of great reasons. One of the big reasons we got a great loss ratio is because of the programs that LARM has committed to us. Training programs, evaluation programs, sitting down with their managers and actually looking at their liabilities and their potentials out there and putting a plan of action in place that really makes those corrections. We got a great staff that is able to, because of our ownership in the pool, is able to negotiate those insurance claims face to face. There is no, I don't know how to say it for sure, but the pool doesn't have, we don't insure anyone other than cities. So we don't, unless the city of Hastings smashes into the city of Norfolk, we don't have to worry about conflicts of interest because we're just insuring ourselves. So when one of our fire trucks gets in a wreck, and it just happened to us not so long ago, and say we're off of the pool and in private insurance, say we're under one of the private insurance companies, you could pick your pick, and this person hits us, or we, God forbid, hit them with the fire truck, and we both have the same insurance company, how does that conflict of interest work out? I mean, I think the insurance folks in the room would tell you, well, we just settled the claim. Either way, you pay yours, we'll pay ours. It's the same insurance company. But in our instance, there is no competition. We are the pool, so we can negotiate strong and frank with the process, and we can usually get a better resolution to those claims. And that's one of the benefits. That's a fairly significant benefit. So.
Shane, do you know how many cities aren't in the pool?
In Nebraska?
Yeah.
I don't know, but there's a lot of cities.
500 and some?
Yeah,
I think it's a little over 500, because there's only 14% in, there's almost 86, I don't think 85 is even correct, I think it's almost 86% are not in the pool.
Right, but on the county level, Councilman Faust, about 92 or 93% of the counties in the state of Nebraska are in the pool. So that's saying, I don't know about the community colleges,
We're not a-
maybe
we're
you
not a
know.
county.
Maybe you know, but our liabilities are similar.
Yeah.
I mean, they have
But
police forces, they
I
have,
mainly want to check on the cities, so we're comparing apples to apples, because if we start doing oranges, I got a little more stuff for you, so it's up to you.
well.
But I just want
I'm not-
apples to
I'm not-
apples.
Okay, moving on. Good question. Anyone else that has a question?
Shane, I've got a question for you. We have, currently we have, it's called equity ownership without accessibility in LARM. And I understand that going forward, the rate structure is going to change. And equity accessibility or equity ownership without accessibility really doesn't give us anything to sell. How, and Randy, maybe you can answer this, how is our equity position going to change if we were to go into next year versus what it would have been last year?
In the past couple years, our equity had been a factor in what we got in our dividends. LARM paid out substantial dividends to the city of Norfolk the last 2 years. With the new rating structure that's being proposed, I anticipate dividends will either be eliminated or greatly reduced. So it won't have such an impact on the dividends, but our equity will be a factor that's taken into account in the underwriter's modifier going forward. Our loss ratio will be another factor that's taken into account. Our equity will be a factor that's taken into account. And since we have a large equity position in LARM, $900 and some thousand, that should be a factor keeping our rates down going forward, not just for next year or the next year, but for the long term. Something would turn around with, or we'd have a poor loss ratio, that equity could get eaten up. But as long as we maintain a good loss ratio, that equity should be out there for us and be working for us in the reduction of our premiums going forward.
So if there were larger losses, that equity is eaten up, if you will, across the board. That's just not our portion of that equity. Is that right?
LARM's got a total equity, and for purposes of the dividends and for purposes of the underwriter's modifier going forward, that's been tracked as to which city has contributed that equity. In other words, you've put so much premiums into the pool, you've had this many losses.
We have 16 or 17% of that equity. Is that right?
So our equity will be maintained for us and tracked for us as part of the total LARM equity. And it'll be our portion of that total LARM equity that will be factored into our underwriter's modifier going forward.
Okay.
There's some cities that probably even have a negative equity if they've had a lot of losses, and that will be factored into their underwriter's modifier going forward.
Do we know what that underwriter's modifier is going to be, or is that coming out in the summer?
They have not yet. JI, I don't believe, has developed exactly what that underwriter's modifier is going to look like. I know as a board member I have not seen the particulars of that, so I don't know exactly how they're going to factor all these things into that underwriter's modifier. I heard that they thought we'd have a substantial discount because of that underwriter's modifier, but I have not seen the particulars, and I do not know, I can't answer particularly how any one piece of that will factor in.
Okay. Thank you.
Approximately how many risk management claims do we submit a year, approximately?
I don't get, Gary, you're,
I would say it can vary on any number of things. Perhaps in a year's time, we may have 25 to 40, and again, depending, that would be maybe just on the liability side. Work comp could be that same number also for workman's compensation.
Okay.
JI is here, as obviously, and they're available for any questions that the council may have on any of the in particulars, since they are the new third-party administrator. I'd offer that to you.
I guess just to address Vicky's question, and I did some research on this just to give you an idea, and they're true, there is 60 entities in the pool. Only 54 of those are communities. There's 2 rural fire districts, 3 solid waste coalitions, which we're also a member through our solid waste coalition, and then there is 1 board of public works. So there's actually 54 communities that are members of the alarm pool, and of those, with Norfolk being 1, there's 8 that are like in population. Out of the Class 1 cities that are defined in the League of Municipalities, Crete has a population of 6,241, and Holdridge has a population of 5,636. So to me, they wouldn't be size comparable to Norfolk. I don't know if that helps answer some of your questions, but and as Councilman Faust pointed out, that's representative of about 14% of the communities that are participating in the League of Municipalities, which is a requirement to be a member of ALARM. So,
one thing that's important about that, though, we must recognize the state of Nebraska and the size and the types of cities that are out there. There are lots of those cities that are very small cities, and many times those cities don't hardly have any employees, or they are so small their villages are smaller. I think one of the things that the board has done, and I think Randy will know this, there is a strategy set up there that there's a certain number of those cities in the state of Nebraska that the third-party administrator is trying to target to bring into the pool, because obviously not all of the 500 and some odd cities are good risk for the pool to be brought into. A small village, for instance, they may pay a very small portion of premium, and if they have 1 claim, it may take years and years and years and years before they would ever recoup the fact of the small premium that they're paying. So I think there's a strategy out there that the third-party administrator wants to go after maybe 35 or 40.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Of those towns that are good risks, that are the right size, and are targets, I guess, to try to grow the pool to try to make them members also. So I don't think you can look at all 500 and say we wished all 500 would be members, because that may not be a true statement. There may be a portion of those that really are real potential pool members.
and I appreciate J.I. covered that in our subcommittee meeting, and I appreciate them coming down and covering basically their change in philosophy, and I'm encouraged by some of the things that they're looking at changing, but I just was mainly present day addressing Councilman Saunders' question.
I would agree. I'm glad you guys came to the subcommittee meeting, and I would ask you, are there any substantial changes or differences in the information you gave us at the subcommittee?
We did complete one of the things that the consultant, move back up a little bit if that's okay.
Yep.
My name's Pete Patterson.
Yep. Will you do that when you come on over to the mic, too, so that we get it recorded for us? Thanks, Pete. State your name and where are you from?
You don't want to know that.
Yeah.
My name's Pete Patterson. I'm the program manager for the League Association of Risk Management. I actually have a house in Houston, Texas, Friendswood, Texas, technically, and we're in the process of moving to Austin. But for the last, since October, I've been living in the Cornhusker Marriott in Lincoln. So my wife will tell you I'm a Lincoln resident at this point. So but that's been great to be a part. JI is my company that I work for, and Shane alluded to it earlier. One of the things that the alarm board saw was a need to make some changes, and they did a national search for companies that help manage pools. And so kind of with great pride, I'm able to say our company was selected over several companies that bid to provide the services for the League Association of Risk Management. We took over the program October 1. We began working on it around early August, and some people would say we actually started about in March, trying to look at what are the needs and what's the feasibility for doing a program in Nebraska, very similar to other programs we manage. Our home state is Texas. We've been involved in the pooling business in Texas since the very beginning. Our founding partner started the Texas Municipal League Pool, which is now the biggest pool in the country. It's got, I think, the last time I saw was a $1.5 billion in investments working for the cities in Texas. And so we know that this whole concept is a great concept. In fact, we know, we can show you that over time, a intergovernmental risk pool, which is what you have in your program, will always be more cost effective than commercial insurance, every single time. But mathematically, there's no alternative. Now, that's not to say from year to year there can't be some companies that come in and they could write you for free if they wanted to, because they're big. But so to get that concept down, that every single time a pool will be a better deal. And that's one of the things we've seen, the statistic that Shane gave you earlier. 85% of public entities are now participate in their statewide pool. And there's some of those that are very large that do self-insurance. They do standalone programs. So technically the number may be even higher. Recently saw a number by the Safety National president. That Safety National is a large company that does reinsurance for workers' compensation. And they show that 50% of all employees today are covered by self-insurance plans. So I say that to say the entire marketplace is moving away from commercial insurance, moving into self-insurance arrangements, which is largely what you have in your pool. And you've made an investment in it since '95. We came in, we saw some things right away that we know we can do better. And one of them is coverages. We looked at the coverages and say you had some great coverages that were very innovative when they were first initiated in '95. Some of those things can be even more induced. So what we've done is we've had our underwriters have gone back in and laid out every competitive person that's working in the state, the large companies, as well as every state pool. Actually, I can't say every state pool. Some of the largest and best coverages around pools in the country, and cherry-picked what the best coverages are. And we're going to be rolling those out for renewal on October 1. So that'll be, you will have, I think I can guarantee you'll have the best coverage of any city in the country once we get that pool, once we get that coverage document submitted and ready to go. So you see some major changes in coverages. What we recognize too was that for the pool has reached a maturity level now where the surplus has grown to a level where they don't have to continue to add to surplus. So that stability offers us the ability to lower the rates. And so we talked about that, I know, with the committee about some of the rate reductions that we see that are coming. And I think going back and looking at the losses that Norfolk has had, we think that you're in a great position to see. And the earlier question around the liability modifier, we have not developed that yet. We've made lots of changes since October 1, but we haven't got that far yet. And but we will be having that in by July. We'll have that formalized and ready to go. So I would just encourage you to really grasp this concept that the intergovernmental risk pool is something that hasn't been fully utilized. I mean, I think that Councilmember Faust, he points out that this has not been fully utilized in Nebraska, and we're here to change that. We tend to make some major changes, and so we think you'll be very proud of this program. You'll be very proud of this pool, and so hopefully that answered some of your questions.
I guess I have another question, Pete, and thanks again for being here. And I guess my question revolves around just hypothetically, let's say we choose option C, which is to put it out for bid. Would LARM be submitting a bid?
Absolutely, yes.
And I guess I don't look at this right now as a decision of LARM versus private insurance tonight. I think the big decision will be September 6th when we have to decide what we're going to do. But that's the main thing I wanted to find out, if you guys would be submitting a bid. Up till this point, we've talked about hypothetical numbers and hypothetical situations. And I think if we put it out for bid, that'll give us the opportunity to look at hard numbers.
I think one of the bigger questions for you, I mean, in addition to that, is to look at that bigger picture of what is the risk pool, what's the philosophy behind a pool, why would we do that, why would we want to give our city, I think, better protection, and specifically your employees, the guys that are sitting here right here in front of you. Some of the things that, I mean, we talked about earlier was we're not covering pig farms, and we're not covering auto dealerships, and we're not covering grocery stores. These are cities. And there's some unique things that these guys are exposed to as employees that we can very specifically cover them for. That's going to be questionable by anybody else, because we know what those are, and we will cover those, as well as for public officials. When your name is on that lawsuit, and the control that you're going to feel that you have is very important to you. And so the people who handle those claims, they're 15, 25 feet from my office. I can walk in there and we can get these things resolved quickly, versus calling to Iowa or to New York City to try to talk to a claims adjuster that maybe the agents talked to, maybe they haven't. So it's a gamble. But
could you address our equity and how it would affect the reinsurance?
Absolutely. The equity, to me, represents, I think to anybody in the business would say, equity represents stability, and that's what it's represented up to now. And as far as the cities, you still have exposures that are out there. You still have some claims that are open right now. There's a pretty traumatic employee injury that occurred, and we've made estimates on what we think that's going to cost. Pretty good estimates, but they're never exactly right. So the estimate of what we think that would be is an estimate of what the equity is. Just like the pool surplus is based on an estimate of what we think our exposures are, when that claim is fully paid off and everything's done, which may be 10, 15 years from now. So as far as the calculating how the losses and how the expenses apply, that represents some stability you have. Is that what I'm not sure if I...
Well, I guess my point is, if we maintain our equity, we really maintain our position as far as getting better reinsurance.
Right. And yeah, the reinsurers, one of the things that's really important to understand is that the pool only retains about $500,000, not about, $500,000 of a workers' compensation claim, $300,000 of a liability claim, and up to $250,000 in annual aggregate retention on our property. So by having better members like Norfolk, and brings down the reinsurance costs because they like us, we're more attractive. We're going to shop that this next year, and by us being stable, brings a lot of those folks to the table that want to be a part. They would love to be a part of covering a program like this at $300,000 away or $500,000 away from the first dollar loss. So yeah, your equity brings down the cost, and reinsurance for a pool is a major component of the cost. So
I'd like to address the cost just a little bit. From what I understand, the last few years, all the alarm people say that alarm's going to keep our cost level. In good times and bad times, that's what I've heard every year, that we're going to stay level. Is that correct? I mean, pretty much. I mean, there's hard times when they might go up a little, but pretty much you'll keep us.
Well, the cost relative to the exposure basis, like sometimes you increase, payrolls go up,
if we have
magnitude
problems, but we're way low, so ours should be low right now, I think. Our insurance costs.
Okay.
I did a little chart I'm going to hand around to the council people, but our insurance costs have went up like 300 times in 10 years. I'm going off of our price from 2000 to 2010. They've went from $284,000 to $822,000. I'm not seeing any of that levelness, and that's why a few years ago we decided to start trying to see what's out there, because I believe we should check our insurance more than once every 17 years, and we're going into the 17th year. And our insurance costs have went from $284,000, I'll say it again, to $822, and I'm going to pass that chart along so the council people can see it, but I don't think that's keeping it level, and that's one of my main concerns.
Did the exposures stay level, or did they increase at the same time? What rate did the exposures? Your payroll went up, your expenses have gone up as a city?
Our payroll has been frozen pretty much, little cost of living, on and off, but it hasn't went up 300 times. So I'm very concerned with the cost of our insurance and where we're going with it. And if we own our own insurance company, I don't think it should go up 300 times, and I think we ought to be able to. We had to start this 3 years ago. We had to decide not to sign that 3-year contract so we could see what's out there. And I don't see any harm in seeing what the competition has, and then we come back, like Dale said, and deciding what's the best deal for Norfolk. But not looking at our insurance, I bet you there's not a homeowner out there that has not looked at their homeowner's insurance in 17 years. If there is, then he's a little better off than I am. But I'm going to pass this chart around. I just want to make that comment.
If I may, elected officials, one thing, and Councilman Faust, I think this is important to keep in mind. City insurance, our exposure is much greater and diverse than any one person's exposure or any one company's exposure. So, as far as going out and looking when you're insuring yourself or your company, it's a different animal than a city insurance. And I had a smart man tell me just today that he said, I can get the insurance today, and I'm one guy, and I'm here today, gone tomorrow, basically is what he's saying. But the city of Norfolk is going to carry on forever and ever. Hopefully the city of Norfolk is going to be here, and that's I think that's important. We have a diverse liability range, very diverse. So when I'd ask what, as a city administrator, I'm trying to think, what happens when that hard insurance market comes back, and God forbid we destabilize the pool, it's gone, and we're left at private insurance only, and they say, sorry, no errors in mission coverage for your police officers. What do we do then? Now, am I being dramatic? I don't know. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball on that. All I know is it's happened to us before, and I don't think anyone in this room has a clear enough crystal ball to say that will not happen again. And what happens then as elected officials? There was a reason back in 85 or 95 and in that 10-year time frame that elected officials chose to go with the pools, chose to start the pool. There was a reason for that. And you have to ask yourselves, what were those reasons, and were their decision-making back there for those elected officials, was it sound decision-making when they thought about the whole picture of city insurance? It's a major thing. It's completely different than my home insurance or my business's home insurance or auto insurance or liability insurance in general. It's completely different. It's much more diverse.
But Shane, I hope you're not saying that the insurance companies out there could not give us insurance for firemen and policemen, because those other 500 cities out there are really liable, if that's what you're thinking.
Right now, absolutely, they can and will, and I think they can compete quite readily and will compete quite readily. Absolutely, we've got great private insurance people here locally and across the country. However, there was a time in our history that not that they couldn't compete, they just wouldn't, because it was too great of an exposure.
Well, and you made a comment about the councilman 15 or 16 years ago, and I was on here been for 13. I hope that the reason they did that was to save the city some money. But with these escalating prices of insurance that we've been paying in the last 10 years, we're not saving money. And quite frankly, the private sector, I've compared some towns that are about our size. Like last year, I think that places like Kearney, their insurance was about $300,000 to $350,000 cheaper than ours, and so we get a discount of $100,000 that just by coincidence, since we didn't sign our 3-year agreement, the last 2 years we've gotten a $100,000 check back. But when we're $400,000 over, because we have a lot better loss ratio than Kearney, so we should have cheaper insurance. We're a smaller town than Kearney, so we should have cheaper insurance. And if they're paying $500, I would think we'd be in the $400s, and that's just what I'm rationalizing that by. But we're paying $822, and I'm seeing about $375,000 laying on the table that we're paying for insurance that I don't believe we would have paid last year.
Well, I can appreciate that, Councilman. I think we have to think about being a penny wise and a pound foolish on the future of that, though. We don't know what the future is going to hold on that. We know we got a pool in that is available to us and is going to offer competitive prices. Either you believe that LARM's going to offer you competitive prices in the future going forward, as your board committed to, or you don't. If you believe that they're going to stay true to their word, and they're going to offer those competitive prices as the board recommended earlier in March, then I say you want to think about staying with them for 3 years and letting this company mature and seeing if they're true to their word. You can always bid. You can always bid again. But if you don't think that's true, if you think that LARM isn't sound and they aren't going to stand behind the commitments that they made in the board, then I'd say bid. Personally, I mean, you guys got to do the litmus test. That's why you get paid the big dollars at elected officials. I don't envy you, but that's kind of the decisions you got to make. And I think those elected officials in the past made that decision, Councilman Faust, because not for money, but because they couldn't get any insurance, and they needed the insurance.
That Norfolk could not get any insurance?
That was my understanding.
Okay, I think the guys that had the insurance are in the room tonight, so we might want to check into that. I guess, Scott, one more quick question. The report that we got, the Ken Barris report, we spent money to have them do that. Did we pay for that?
Yes.
Okay. The report on page 40, it says, in our opinion, the reasons for bidding as of October 1st, 2011, which we're coming on to, and that's what we're talking about, outweigh the reasons for not bidding. So the report that we paid money to, that is a LARM group, from what I understand, that did this report, is telling us that the reasons outweigh it to bid it than not to bid it. So they're telling us to bid it.
Did it also say unless changes were made?
It goes on to say in time between now and the withdrawal notice the alarm that would be required. It just says things we have to do. It does recommend other things to do, and one of them is that they better make some drastic changes because they're not right. Being fair in ways that we've talked about.
Our third-party administrators recognizing those and has made those changes and recommend them to the board, and the board embraced it. That's what I'm saying. I think those changes that came from that report that you're quoting are being incorporated in the documents going forward, and the board is embracing that, and we're at a chance now to see that maturity come together and see the proof that will be in the pudding for us. But if we jump out now, we have all those things that we don't know about. I don't know about, you don't know about, no one knows about, could happen to us. And I guess I can't, we got to be careful of that.
That's fine. I can appreciate that.
We got to be careful of that.
That was not an alarm report. That was
no, and maybe I misspoke. It wasn't an alarm report. I heard it was a guy who favors alarm more than he doesn't. That's what I've heard. What's that?
I read the report. I thought it was really fair. It was the same things we recognized when we were just evaluating the program.
And by the way, you are, from my opinion, a breath of fresh air, because I've been battling this for 13 years and it's not been fun. And if you'd have come on about 10 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here tonight arguing. So
I appreciate that. We're getting closer, Dave. You know my goal.
You haven't convinced me yet, but I'm just saying.
That's an important point.
At least we got a report, and we got somebody that's looking at the report, but I can't overlook the 13 years of nobody looking at it, because I think they've done a pretty sad job of keeping up with our insurance needs and our insurance price premiums. So
that's an important point you just made, in my opinion, Councilman Faust, that listen, if they would have been here 10 years ago, maybe we wouldn't have this discussion. That could very well be. I don't know. I do know this, and I know you don't like to hear it, but I do know this. We can't change the past. All we know is about the present, and we can only anticipate the future off of beliefs of folks that we trust or we don't trust to make decisions there. So that's what we've embraced or encouraged DeLarme to do through comments that you've made in the past, Councilman Faust. I think that's we're on the cusp of implementing all those changes, and I think it's that's what's in front of you. So either we think that's important, the pool concept is sound for us, or it's not, and we should go to bid. I know going to bid is going to cost us some money, so we have to look at that as well.
Is it going to cost us money or save us money? If we save that 300 and some thousand, that little 50,000 doesn't mean anything, because we just saved $250,000 for the people of Norfolk if we come in 300,000 low.
Right, and I guess no one knows the answer to that question. I don't know if it's, what if it doesn't? Then we just spent
Then we have lost 50,000, but I almost put my wager on that we're going to make more than 50,000 on a bid system.
I'm going to
and we don't know.
turn to, there's others of you too that might want to come forward and speak, so I certainly don't want this to be, Mr. Miller, you can stay right there.
Hot seat.
And he needs to stay right there.
Carl Reeder, 1010 4th Street.
I will. Okay.
I guess, what, we started discussing this in May of '09, and we used to sign an interlocal agreement every year, kind of like this before you now. And we haven't seen that in the last couple of years, at least when I was on the council. So there were 2 years that they didn't sign that so that we could get ready for this. So, in my opinion, it's probably a good time to bid if you're going to bid it. You're not stuck in that interlocal agreement. I guess I got to commend LARM. I think these guys had made some big changes. I think that's really important. And I can understand why we'd have loyalty towards LARM and the other, 60 cities that are involved in that. I can appreciate having some loyalty for the insurance agents that kind of helped us through that survey. They're our neighbors. I guess the biggest thing for me is having our loyalty to our citizens of Norfolk that actually pay the bill. So I guess we got to make sure they got the best bang for their buck. And in my opinion, the only way to do that is to bid it. Otherwise, you really don't know. And I guess the other thing we might have for LARM, question-wise, is what the penalty would be for us bidding it, or if there is one. So.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
I just want to go off of that too, that Carl, if we have a penalty and we own our own insurance company, I really don't believe we should have a penalty, but there is a penalty, and I think it's a little excessive. So I've made that comment in a subcommittee. I wanted to make it one more time.
If I could make one other statement, I guess at that 2009 meeting, there were a couple local business owners that did offer to do that work for free, the consulting as far as getting that ready to bid. So, thank you.
Appreciate you being here, Carl.
One question I have, if we do put this to bid, do we lose the dividend from 2010 and 2011? Because we can technically played for that policy.
We will not lose any dividends that we've already received. The only thing we might lose is if there's a dividend that would be declared for the next year. If we give our termination notice now, we would not get the dividend for next year.
But does that dividend come off this year's premium? I mean, this cycle's premium, or you know what I'm saying? Are they paying that on the back end or the front end? Do you follow me?
Well, the dividends go back and look at our history throughout our participation with LARM. Mm-hmm. Those dividends are declared effective October 1st, is how they've done it the last 2 years. So if they declared a dividend this year, sometime in the summer, the board would look at it and say, okay, we think we have this much surplus we can afford to pay out to the members. That dividend would be declared and be effective October 1st of 2012 or 2011. For the 11-12, we get it paid during the 11-12 fiscal year. But it would be related to what our loss history and LARM's loss history going back many years. But we have our termination notice now. We would not get that dividend whether we stayed in LARM or not. At least that's the current policy as it's been laid out, that we would not get that dividend that's going to be effective October 1 of 2011. I don't believe that dividend will be anywhere near the size what we've got in the past 2 years, if there is one.
So we paid our premium, though, for this current year, but that dividend is attached to next year's premium, basically.
Well, the dividend relates to the past.
Well, yeah, I understand it relates to the past performance, but to go for bids and to forgo the dividend after you've already paid, that to me seems a little extreme, but I'm just putting it, it's something we got to consider if we're tonight, if we're thinking about going out for bids. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant amount of money that could possibly be out of. I mean, last year it was $112,000 dividend?
Right.
Yes, but we're all square. Our account's square right now. We're insured till October of this year, and we're all square. Our premiums are paid. We've received our dividend. End of story. But if we decline tonight, then you're saying we won't get that dividend on October 1st if we choose LARM in September. That's basically what you're saying in a nutshell.
If there would be a dividend declared for October 1 of 2011.
And Shane, is that kind of what you were asking? We're all square with them right now.
I understand that.
Okay.
See, and Shane, that's one thing that concerns me. We own our own insurance company, and we get penalized even if we pay our fee right on time in October. It messes us up a little bit, but it's not enough, and it might not even, Randy sent out a memo saying, might not even get it. So, but it's kind of unfair when we own our own insurance company. I'm really concerned when we can't bid it every 16 or 17 years just to see what the private sector is even like. We get penalized. I don't get that rationality.
Well, you have to be a member of the pool in order to get the dividend. So if you're not a member of the pool, you're not going to sit for the dividend if there is a dividend. The dividends going forward are going to be tied into the premium discount instead. So they're changing their mental model of how they're going to apply that. So the most likely the dividend will be smaller, if at all, is what Randy's saying. But there's no ability to get a dividend if you're not a member of the dividend.
But how
as
do
far
we...
as jumping in and out of a company, it's just like owning any other business. First of all, it's not an insurance company. It's a pool that we're members of and we're owners of. But if you're going to say, I'm in today, tomorrow, and when the roses are good, I'm in the company, but if they get a little tough, I'm out of the company, pretty soon you're not going to have a partner in your company very long. And so when those sister cities look at a player that's kind of playing both sides of the fiddle, for lack of better words, then they have difficulties. I mean, it isn't fair, it isn't genuine, it isn't even prudent for us to come in a company and stay in, and then look out here and say, well, there's a better deal for a couple of years over here, so I'm going to jump out and do this. And then when this deal goes south, well, this looks better, so I'm jumping back in. We got to be careful of that as a community. I mean, our reputation as a city of Norfolk is on the line every time we make a decision like that.
But Shane, what I'm saying is if we just look out and get a bid now from somebody else, and then we pay our premium, and let's say we do stay in LARM, we never did get out. So why are we penalized?
Because they set those dividends 90 days out. They have to set those dividends when you go to bid, not the dividends. They sent the premiums for the insurance. About 90 days is the most that pool or private insurers, and correct me if I'm wrong, insurance people, they can't really give you a good solid number until they get closer to the time that you're going to renew.
Shane, I want you to know I'm not here to question, what you're trying to explain, or the explanations the city staff has given us over the last few months. You guys have done a tremendous job with that. And so I don't know if there's really such much an issue about what LARM provides, what the commercial to me, it's about the dollar amount. What are we missing? And so that's in the back of my mind. Anytime I have to do something, I have to bid it. I always had to put bids, and I've always got people bidding against me. So it's hard to grasp that concept. And I'm not suggesting that we would jump out every year to get bids. I think we would. I mean, we couldn't do that to JI and LARM. Say, hey, every year we're going to be going out and getting bids. I think just like their policy states, a 3-year deal, and that you're going to be asked the same thing from the commercial insurance. That we would be asking, what are you going to do for us for 3 years? It's the same thing we're asking from the LARM is, what are you going to do for us for 3 years, or where are we at for 3 years? So I don't think anybody's suggesting we would jump out and jump in, jump out and jump in. I think it's just right now is the opportunity to get bids, which we don't. And I know there's 3 deals on our agenda tonight, that we can choose from, A, B, or C. So I guess we just needed to maybe we need to move to that discussion of which way we want to go, if we want to look at A, B, or C and start eliminating stuff so we can move on. But like I said, this has nothing to do with, I think it's more of a what-if type deal, so.
Scott, take the mic and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Scott Williams. I'm with Insurance Associates. I live at 1111 Nebraska Avenue and office at 1900 West Paswalk. We were the agency that had the coverage in 1986 when the pool was created, and I was almost as young as you, Shane, but I was a little ahead of you. As my recollection is, I honestly don't believe there was a lack of police professional coverage. It was critical at that juncture. It was a pricing issue. I believe, though, the coverage was always in place, never elapsed. But I also believe that state law has evolved a little bit to insulate municipalities from some of the liability cap issue in particular that's come along since in that time frame. So there were some issues there, and there were certainly valid points then. As I'm listening to this discussion, the idea of dividends and jumping in the pool, jumping out of the pool, this just seems like an awfully complicated discussion to have in an open forum. Quite frankly, in our industry, and I think some of these gentlemen over here would attest to this, dividends are an overcharging of premium. And call it what it is. Call it a dividend, call it a return of premium. It has been charged too much. I love bringing them to people. I love bringing in clients dividends. But bottom line is it's an overcharge of premium for the exposure. Since 1986-ish, there hasn't been any competition for the city's business. Dave, no business has had their premiums go up 300% in 10 years. Some of these other folks, I think, over here that I compete with day in and day out.
That's what I'm kind of saying.
In the open market, we don't,
and
the market doesn't allow it.
You're right, and we should have a chance to see that instead of just watching them climb through the ceiling. That's all I'm saying.
At least, if nothing else, satisfy the curiosity. And I think if you have to spend some money to do that, it's a fact in the world that we live in. When I go call on somebody to quote their insurance, there's going to be a cost to somebody to do that. It may not be a direct cost, but some staff person in that business is going to have to gather loss history. They're going to have to provide me payrolls and policies and answer this question and answer this stupid question and answer this valid question and find this stupid one over here. And I would guess that might be, depending on the complexity of the risk, it might be if you want to equate it to a value, it might be 1 to 2% of a premium dollar associated with answering the question for that business owner, is it worth it to me to bid my insurance? And if then 1 to 2% for this group, you can do the math, that's $8,000 to $16,000, something to that effect. And but if that answers the question in your minds, and you end up saving significant money, more than what LARM is proposing, then I think you've done your due diligence. Then you have to make this is the easy decision today. The tougher decision comes in September. When you decide to stay with LARM, go with me, or go with Mark. That's the tough decision, quite frankly. And I would recommend that you put it out to bid. So, any questions on? Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Yeah, Jim.
And I've got a question, and you and I have gone around on this because you insure me.
Yeah.
Why is it that you can't quote me out further than 90 days? I mean, why? And
I'm painfully honest at times. Most likely it's because of me. I don't want to. I'm doing somebody else 90 days ahead of you. And so a lot of it's more than for an agency, a lot of it's more just a workflow cycle. The carriers, though, don't like to do it because they're always in the flux of rate revisions, and there might be a rate revision pending that's 30 days ahead of your renewal or 60 days, so they have to get past those things. But those are somewhat predictable.
My question always is, okay, why is that in that industry? Because in my industry, I bid things out a hell of a lot further than 90 days.
You're bidding 9 hours ahead of time instead of
no, I'm bidding out a lot further than 90 days.
Further days, okay.
You know, I may be bidding 15 months out.
Okay.
You know, and so there's a certain amount of risk there for all of us, but I'm going, why is it that you know, because then we're not necessarily at such a critical point where nobody knows any, you know, everything's just hypothetical.
I think a lot of it's the regulatory environment with workers' comp rates. They change on a given day every year. Other carriers have package renewal rate cycles, so, and then a lot of it's me, too.
Likewise, so does steel and concrete and wood and everything else.
I know it.
And so I have a hard time biting off that, you know,
Scott, can I ask a question, Scott?
Yeah, sure.
As a commercial company here, can you give us you know, we like to look 3 years out. Is that something you can do as far as saying to us, our quote this year is this, to be honored and acceptable with no change, certainly within the city, no detrimental change to what's happening? Can you guarantee that for 2 years out?
I don't think I would. I'll put my tap dance shoes on now, but no, I think you have to qualify that if your loss history stays similar to what it is.
Okay.
Carriers will underwrite your business to a given loss ratio, and if your premiums and your losses stay within that,
assuming they do.
Yep. We would hope that you stand on your own and you'll go forward pretty steady for the 3-year cycle. But if you have a large loss that might spike your workers' compensation loss history, as an example, we might be able to ride that out a little better, but your mod will go up. But your rates, and here we're drilling down into some detail that we don't need to, but there are some things that if you have a claim or two large, we're going to ride that out. If you have a lot of small claims, car wrecks, slip and falls, whatever, you might see some increase in that, but that falls back to risk management. And if you're still doing a good job on your risk management, theoretically, your loss history will continue forward, and theoretically, your premiums will stay somewhat constant. So.
Scott, do you see any problem with the insurance companies out there that you would bid this to having trouble taking care of our police and our firemen? Because that is very important, but you do have the capability to give us what we have now.
I think the commercial marketplace has been for quite some time able to handle your exposures.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you guarantee they will forever?
Nope, I won't guarantee that.
Who makes that decision? Who makes the decision in the private insurance market? Is there a board of directors that makes that decision, Scott, or who makes that decision? Do you make that locally, or how does that work? I mean,
how many questions do you have here? Let me answer one.
Well, who makes the decision about coverages and those? Is it a local guy? I mean, I'm sorry to be so simple-minded on this, but
no, it's not going to be a local guy. It's certainly not going to be me. But depending on the carrier that you're involved with, it's going to be a corporate decision to either stay in or get out of the municipality business. However, the 3 or 4 carriers that are in the business now have a pretty long track record of being in it, and I don't have their crystal ball, but I don't see them coming out of it. So, but I can't say that.
To avoid that problem that we had in the 80s, where there was a pricing issue, I wish I knew more about that and really knew all the nuances of that. The pricing issue you're saying it was too expensive, or we got coverage, but were you saying?
I believe it got very expensive. It had probably some shrinkage of limit. I don't think it was ever the 40,000 premium for 50,000 in coverage or whatever your analogy was there, but
it's just an analogy.
That'd be a pretty good deal, but for the seller. But there was and I think Rick can probably attest to this. He's been writing municipal insurance a long time too. There was a contraction in that marketplace in the 80s, and the legal climate has helped that scenario with the caps that you can only get 10 million or 5 million out of a city now, I think, or a school, and it's a better environment, and the players that are in the game are the ones that have made the cut for the last 25 years. So I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't see it changing.
Okay.
I guess, for the local control issue, is that if that's important to the elected officials, I just need to ask that so they hear your response to it. I mean, do we have a voice in that? Number one, do we have a voice in setting the premiums? Does the city of Norfolk have a voice in that, other than loss ratios? Do we have a direct voice in that? And number two, what would happen if one of my fire trucks or one of the city's fire trucks got in a wreck like it did here a few months ago, and we had private insurance, you name the company, and the person that hit us, they was a big dump truck, and there's this massive collision, and I had a couple firemen injured or killed, and they lost a person or two. What would happen to that claim if that insurance company was insured the city and the construction company, and they both collided? What happens then, just so I know?
Well, even though the claim is with the same carrier, the same carrier, each party, the dump truck and the city, are going to be defended individually of their own, with their own team of adjusters. We're doing a worst case scenario here. There'll be large loss litigation specialists that deal with that. Your truck will be adjusted by your carrier, and you're going to get a check from them, and if it's the other party's fault and they're resisting payment, we're going to make your truck fixed, and then we're going to go back and try to collect from the other party when everything's all said and done. And then conversely, the same carrier is going to do the same thing for their truck on that side if you're resisting payment, and if the injuries involved, those will have to work through their respective workers' compensation claim channels, and it might take a long time to get those. If you were not at fault, we're going to respond to your firefighters. We're going to make them whole. Then at some point in time, if there's negligence on the other party, we're going to go back and try to collect that. But there's so many complicated factors with a worst case claim like that.
Do you ever see any conflict when those kind of things happen? Is there any potential for conflicts of interest, or do you see a conflict of
No, because I've got a claim going right now where one of my clients has a claim with one of his customers, and they're both insured with the same carrier. And they both have their guards up. They're both ready to fight each other. The fact that they're fighting within the same company doesn't really matter. They aren't going to share claim information. It is company A versus company B, and if they go to court, they're going to go like this. They're going to fight each other just as hard, and whoever has to pay. So.
But the person making the decision, do they have a board of directors that makes that decision at the end of the day? They're saying we're kind of in the pot either way here. Whereas if you have two separate insurers, does that make the process cleaner, and is there less conflict of interest in that?
Well, there wouldn't be any perceived conflict of interest, but it'd be easier if you didn't have to fight within your own company. But the carriers that are involved in municipal business are also involved in commercial business, so there's a chance you could have your fire truck hit by a dump truck insured by the same company. But I'm in that situation right now, and it's just something we deal with. So you guys have just never experienced that.
Yeah, we don't want to either.
Right. All right. Thanks.
Man, I knew if I got up first, I'd get the most questions. So I'll turn it over to you. So.
I appreciate you being here, Scott. Thanks. Please. Got a gentleman waiting in the wings. Mark, I'm going to try to hold Shane back a little bit so he's not throwing questions at you too, but
There's a distinct possibility that blood relative insurance
I know,
claim
that's what's scaring me here a little bit, so.
could be in the room.
I understand that, so,
Without repeating too much, I mean,
Thank
I think
you.
the council persons all have kind of, I had a little outline to go over, and I think they hit about every point. I mean, I guess the only way you can make an informed decision on this whole thing is to have all your information. The only way to get all your information is to have your thing go out for bids. Nobody has said that, the way we're talking here is if we vote yes to bid this thing, that alarm's out. I mean, we're acting like they're dead in the water just if we vote that, and nobody has said that. In fact, the way the new third-party administrator is operating, it sounds like they may come in pretty darn good. So I don't know why we wouldn't just go and find that out for sure. It hasn't been found out for sure in 15, 16, 17 years, whatever it's been, you guys have talked about. I think it was a good point. That you guys said that you went out and shopped third-party administrators. You looked all over the country and you found the best one there. And I think they are a fine organization. But I think that's a good point to use for the same reason to look at insurance. You bring in another set of eyes. You bring in another way of looking at things. And by golly, if something might come up that said, oh yeah, maybe we could do that. In fact, they said they went and cherry-picked all the stuff, all the coverages and stuff like that. Well, let's see what they cherry-picked, from our companies, from the commercial companies. Another thing, the hard and soft market stuff they've been talking about and what that can change. Just real briefly, the hard market comes about when claims are high and investments are low. Then companies need to come in. They need to find premium to keep their reserves and their profits up, right? The soft market comes in when claims are low and investments are high. Okay, they got a little extra money that they can kick back to their shareholders or their policy holders and stuff like that. So right now we're kind of in where the market's going to be for quite a while because claims are down and investments are down. I don't know how everybody else's investments have done for a while, but they haven't been real rosy. So underwriting has had to come in and do a better job of underwriting and getting that underwriting gain because they can't count on this investment fudge room there. They've got to make a profit right there. So what happens if this investment market gets turned around and that starts going up? What do you think premiums can do in the commercial? They could actually dip some more. So the market is it's neither hard nor soft in my opinion. The market is where it should be and is where it's going to be because underwriting has gotten tighter on that. And then, they talked a little bit about, if Norfolk gets out, that could be the start of the downfall alarm. I don't believe that. Because if it is, if us getting out, our 600,000 or 800,000 or whatever we're throwing out there, if that is the start of the downfall to this thing, then we need to consider if we should be in it at all. Because if you go through a 7 tornado streak like Grand Island did up and down that street and a million-something loss that Kearney went through the last couple of years, what does that do to our pool and our markets? So, and you got the rest. I gave you guys some stuff on there. I just think another set of eyes looking at this can hurt. And I think competition is good, and I think monopolies are not. And right now it seems more like if we just give it up and say we're staying with it, what's to keep their pencil sharp and their coverages sharper? So.
Mark, thank you.
I got an answer to that. And by the way, in '85, you were right next to me. With
I was?
What keeps their pencil sharp is right there, and all the folks in the room. You have a voice. When we have a board of directors, Mark, I know you write for a lot of companies, but the only voice you have is your premium dollars. You don't have a voice otherwise. You have a voice, a direct voice on the board, and that's important information.
What does keep your pencil sharp mean?
Mark said that.
Well, to me, that means that you keep competitive. 300% gain in 10 years is not keeping your pencil sharp.
Who else wants to speak to this tonight? Anybody? This could be an all-night session, guys, because we got a ways to go. And I'm not trying to, Mark, I appreciate it. Good input. And again, I'll try to keep this one over here a little quiet. So anyone else that wants to come forward?
I just have a question. What is the actual bid right now for the city insurance?
Well, and that's just exactly what we're looking at. We're looking at offering opportunity for bids to come in. So that's truly what the discussion is all about. If you're asking,
well, this year it's 822,000. This year it's 822,000.
Okay, because the whole thing is I know a gentleman that is retired from insurance. He's a multimillionaire. I mean, yeah, I know how it works and stuff, and the whole thing is
all those guys back there are multimillionaires. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I know some of them, but he does not live here.
Or are you telling me that the multimillionaire will pay our insurance premium for this year?
Well, there you go.
I'm just saying. I'm saying the whole thing is with insurance companies, there is people getting rich, and and that's the whole thing is that as a community, you just want to spread the burden out to where not one person is getting rich. We just get quality coverage for quality price. And I agree with you. I think that's a little bit high. And so anyway,
I appreciate. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. That's what it's all about.
There are a couple of questions I'd like to just touch real quick. I know
Okay.
this is how much fun this insurance stuff is right here, guys.
Yeah, right.
That's one thing I believe Mr. Williams and I would agree on, that this isn't the contentious part until you get the different coverages from different companies on the table and all that. I wish J.I. had been a part of this from the very beginning. There would be a lot of things we'd do differently.
You know what, J.I., so do we.
Yeah.
Trust me.
One of the things we did do, with the changes that the board made, it took a while to get rid of the the previous administrator because there were some contractual things that they had developed into it. I just want to highlight one thing is if we don't do our job, we have worded the contract in such a way that we can be terminated within, I believe I don't know the exact day, I think it was 120 days. It may have been 90, but I'm going to say 120. That Jack can lose. So if we don't do what we're telling you we're going to do, we're out of there pretty darn fast. So that was something you didn't have before. So that's one of the benefits. One of the things that we can do is obviously we promise you we're going to make these coverage document changes. That'll be some of the best that nobody else has talked about, being able to change the things that they're doing to specifically address things for Nebraska cities. I think that's key for what you guys are doing. There's things like the Nebraska Accountability and Disclosure Commission, some very specific things that need to be covered for your employees. There's also been, we haven't really talked much about the services. The big differentiator in services is that we come in, we do a lot of training for employees, we do law enforcement training, some things that is part of that premium dollar, because we know that if we can drive down the losses, we drive down the claims, that's more money back into the coffers of the city. When you're in these situations with budget cuts and stuff, the last thing that you're going to be doing is doing a lot of extra training, and so that's part of your premium dollars. One of the things that's been raised is how will we know if they're competitive? Well, you can watch us grow this pool. You can see us compete, and if that's not the case, you'll know that we didn't add new business. We'll be providing Randy and the board a summary of our competitive work every quarter, that they'll be reviewing every bid we do, every proposal we make, and where we came in on price. So you have some security there to know how those things are coming out. So those are some things we're going to do to be accountable to you guys and to make sure we do really the best. We believe in this wholeheartedly as a company. We've been in it for quite a while. I started managing my first pool in 1992, and so I love what we get to do. I love what we get to provide. We don't get paid a commission. All those things are really great to be able to stand up here and say, I have just great pleasure in protecting the cities and public entities. And so and I represent about 120 other people that love to do what we get to do. So thank you for our time tonight.
Thanks, Pete. Okay, where are we with this? I think we've had plenty of discussion. Come on up. You bet.
I'm Mark Love. I live at 2204 Hardison, and I'm just a concerned citizen, that's all. And basically, I read the article in the paper. It's kind of one of the reasons I was down here. And just a few things that was brought up was just as far as there was a couple things about we put this out to bid as far as the budget on some software. They put it out to bid. Council consider a bid in 30 days again for a transfer station. On the agenda, they talked about the bid replacement. A contract is going to be awarded to the successful bidder was stated. The successful bidder was stated as far as what we're going to do down at the park. I guess to me it's a black and white issue. I just don't see. I'm in sales and my feet are held to the fire every day. And it's either you're the high guy or the low guy. And I'm not saying I know there's more involved in this than with what I do, but to me it's just black and white. I just don't see what the problem is putting this out to bid and seeing what else is out there. That's my thing. I guess, if LARM's the better, I don't care who gets it. If LARM's the better one, then great. I just don't see, everybody's talking about all this different stuff and some of it's going over my head and I'm thinking, it's black and white. It's bid or no bid and that's it. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your input. And so that being said, I really think we're about to the point of now, we do have 3 different versions that have been presented to us by staff. So at this point, looking at resolution number 2011-3, there's 3 different versions that we need to look at, A, B, and C.
Your Honor, I would introduce resolution 2011-3C.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion with a second that we adopt version C, which would provide a 180-day termination of participation in LARM as of September 30th, 2011. Motion and a second. I would ask you to vote.
May I have a remark,
I'm
please?
sorry. Yep, I'm sorry. I just guess we've heard so many. Yep, my fault.
I think that if we should successfully vote in option C, which has been proposed, I think that we're giving up much more than we're gaining in this instance. We're giving up all our equity. We're giving up any discounts that we may be receiving, and we're putting ourselves in a position where we have no return. No return whatsoever. We will not be able to return to LARM. We will not be able to return to any current status, and we'll be forfeiting all of our equity. We'll be forfeiting any existing or forthcoming dividends, and we just put ourselves at ground zero. And let me tell you that I was around in 1986 when this insurance market was termed to be a hard market. No, we were not denied insurance. It wasn't the fact that we couldn't get insurance, but the premium at that time for hard insurance was almost dollar for dollar for coverage. And that's what prompted us to think about self-insurance. And I just hesitate at this point in time to vote self-insurance out.
And I appreciate your position, Jim, but you heard Pete say that LARM would be submitting a bid. In September, we will be considering LARM's bid alongside the other bids, just for clarification. I understand we'll lose that equity position, but LARM is still going to be a player in this. It's happened already in 2 Class 1 cities in the state, Papillion and Kearney. Kearney decided to go with private, Papillion decided to stay with LARM. That's all I'm asking is for that chance to vote,
And
which we haven't had.
We may rebut that by we're judging most of our decisions on our comparisons between the city of Kearney and the city of Norfolk and an alleged substantial difference in premium costs. Now, is there anyone from Barris here to answer any questions?
No, not from Barris, Councilman.
The information that I have received in research is that when Barris got the information from the city of Kearney. They were given false information. Their payroll was submitted to Barris in a figure that was some $600,000 less than its actual expenditure was, which makes a substantial difference in premium cost when workman's comp is 35% of the whole package. Secondly, failed to tell you about a contingency fund that the city of Kearney started to put in their budget to cover what they termed to be assumed liability, which was another $100 and some thousand. So when you take those two figures and take them apart, you find out the differential between your premium in Kearney and your premium in Norfolk were very, very similar.
And these are all hypothetical.
They're hypothetical, I'll agree.
We'll have the hard numbers if we vote this in.
Yep.
We won't have to go on hearsay and hypothetical information.
Randy, did you say that we won't lose all of our equity, we just lose this year, right?
The way LARM's policy is now, we would lose all of our equity if we give that termination notice.
Okay, which we may not get anyway.
That's different.
No, it stays there.
Going forward with JI's proposed underwriter modifications, we would get the benefit of that equity in our future premiums going forward. I don't think there's going to be any large dividends if we go to the new pricing policy, because there's not going to be a lot of, I think it was Scott that mentioned dividends are really what you'd overcharge for premiums. That's probably not how I would have said it, but yeah, you've collected more premiums than you needed to pay your claims. Of course, you're always looking with a crystal ball when you're back here declaring your dividends. You're not doing that when you're setting your premiums. But that equity will benefit us going forward into the new pricing formula for as long as we retain that equity. And if we keep our losses good, that equity should be out there for many, many years, maybe forever. So yes, we would be giving up all the equity under what LARM's current policy is now if we give a termination notice as provided for in version C.
Okay, thank you.
Randy?
But we do not know what that equity modifier is going to be. Do we even have a guess?
As I said earlier, the board has not seen the details of how that underwriter's modifier is going to be put together. I don't know if JI has anything. I have no knowledge of exactly how that's going to work. I don't know if JI's got some thoughts that they're willing to share, but I cannot give you any insight on that.
We do know, Randy, however, we do know what Kearney's budget numbers, what they have in their budget this year. We know what that number is. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Kearney's numbers are substantially, as Dave indicated, Councilman Faust indicated, they're substantially lower than Norfolk's numbers. Their insurance in their budget's $535,000. As Councilman Brenneman mentioned, they've got uninsured losses in there. It looked like about 3 years ago they made a major change in their workers' comp program. Their insurance costs went from $273,000 in 07-08 to $152,801 in 08-09, and that's when they started budgeting uninsured losses. They must be retaining a lot of loss that they weren't before, which has driven down that premium, but it's also increased their exposure, the amount of money that they will be paying out of their own pocket. So if you take that $100,000 Councilman Brenneman mentioned and add it to the $535,000 of premium, you're getting a net $635,000 that they're budgeting to cover their losses, either via paying insurance or what they're budgeting to pay out themselves. That compares to Norfolk's premiums of $822,424 for 10-11. We got $112,884 dividend paid to us this year. Makes our net $709,540. So about Kearney's net's about $75,000 in round numbers better than Norfolk's net for 10-11. I think after the pricing modifications that JI's proposed, Norfolk will be very competitive with Kearney's insurance. It wouldn't surprise me if we aren't actually lower if we take the full discounts, participation discounts that are available. I think if you factor all that in, our premiums will probably be not a lot over $600,000, as best as I can tell. And that is without having the final JI LARM product brought to the board, so I can't say exactly how this is going to work. I can't, for instance, answer the question of exactly how the equity will be accounted for in that underwriter's modifier. But I would anticipate that our premiums would be somewhere in that slightly over $600,000 range. And Kearney's premiums plus uninsured losses were $635,000 in their budget this year. So I think LARM's going to be very competitive with the private insurance if we take our full participation discount based on what JI's proposed. Like I say, that's without knowing the full details of that at this point in time.
Randy, do you think then that if LARM's insurance bid is going to be close to the outside world's insurance bid, do you see any problem with us looking at those then and seeing who really is low? We paid almost as much for this this policy that we got to tell us what to do than we will lose in the whole thing. So don't you think it'd be fair just to see what everybody's got and let's see who is low?
One of the problems we have with that is that we've got almost $1 million, 900 and some $1,000 of equity that's Norfolk's share of LARM's equity that we're going to lose if we give that termination notice.
Will we ever get that? We won't get that, though. I mean, that's not real money they're going to give us. It's going to use for different things, but not money they're going to hand us.
We're going to lose that equity. What I would probably propose doing is if we do go out and look at insurance bids and decide we want to stay with LARM, as Shane mentioned, I'm a board member. I would go to the board and propose strongly that be changed and that Norfolk not lose its equity for taking a look. But there is, as Shane mentioned, and I believe JI's mentioned, reasons for pools trying to keep their members base stable and not having cities go look at that every year and have the potential of people jumping in and out of the program every year. We're basically a bunch of cities have gotten together and are self-insuring through that pool. And it's not, you want stability in that kind of relationship, and that's why these things are in there that discourage jumping in and out, and maybe you don't call it jumping in and out, but try to make the most stability for that membership base that there can be.
I'm going to.
And having said that, I would, if Norfolk looks at this and we say we're going to stay with LARM, I would definitely try to keep it so we didn't lose that equity. But
let me ask
how successful I'd be in that, I don't know.
Let me ask the question though. Am I making the right assumption in all this insurance talk that we've heard? If in fact the city of Norfolk's $995,000 certainly is pertinent when these gentlemen, when LARM goes out there and looks for the insurance, the reinsurance, is that not, I mean, I would assume that's a true statement. And so if the city is not in it, obviously that's still that $995,000 is going to make a difference to those that are in the pool. Therefore, it's never going to be, if we're not in there, we're not going to benefit from it. Am I confusing this even more? Or?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Okay, what I'm saying is right now when LARM goes out there for the reinsurers up, they're going to say we have X amount of dollars in equity build up within this pool. And I'm assuming, and maybe I'm all wet here, but I'm assuming that has that total dollar amount, which is obviously more than the 995, but that's our equity in it. That's going to play a big part of the reinsurance dollars, knowing that you have X amount of dollars out there in equity.
Yes, and That equity, though, won't disappear from LARM.
Right.
It'll disappear from
Our benefit.
The other cities will
We won't get the
benefit, Mayor.
benefit out. It'll be
Absolutely.
spread
If
out.
we leave, the other cities
Right.
benefit, no doubt. They have that pool of cash available to them.
But
I would
that's,
suggest if the council wants to bid, there is one other option that is out there, is version B, and that only extends it for a year. We keep our equity position. We get to see what the third-party administrator does. If LARM and JI are worth their salt, if the guys are worth their salt, you get to see that for a year. It's only a year, and we've been in this, as Dave said, for a lot of times. I don't know if the council could wait another year to see that, and then you'll have answers to all those things. You'll have the performance of JI. You'll know what our premiums are going to be. We already know what Kearney's paying. It's in their on their books. We know what they're paying. We'll be able to compare that and contrast that to other cities for a year. The 180-day window that we're dealing with tonight shrinks down to 90 days next year, so that allows us to take a look out the window like Councilman Faust wants to next year, if that's what the council wants to do, maintains our equity, and then we have this discussion next year, and you'll know a lot more facts if you do that. I just want to let the council know that is another option. That's why you have the three options.
I got one question on that. How does that work if we go to bid in a year that we don't lose the equity? How can don't we still have to cancel out of the policy to go for bid?
What would be different a year from now if we do version B is right now we've got a 2% discount for the 10-11 fiscal year because we agreed to give 180 days notice before September 30, 2011 if we were going to get out. That would go away under version B. And the only notice we'd have to give is the 90 days notice that's in the interlocal agreement.
It goes from 180 to 90 because we're committing to version B. We're going back to the original policy, what it said, and it's a 90-day window.
But we still would have hypothetical numbers because we wouldn't have the hard numbers until we put it out for bid.
Well, you'll know what our premium is next year. You'll know what the premium is going forward for a year because the board will make a recommendation. We'll set for that. We'll understand what our premiums are next year, just like we did the 822 this year. We'll know if it's 200,000, 600,000, or 800,000, and then you'll know what JI and the new policies in place from LARM have done for the community and for the pool. And it's only a year, so it's just a year. So, and the 180-day window that we're dealing with tonight shrinks down to 90, and then you have Scott's ability to, and rest of the private insurers' ability to throw that bid in there, and LARM's ability to create a decent competitive bid within that 90-day time frame, or that 120 days.
Yeah.
And Shane, that costs us the 2% plus or not? I mean,
yes, that
suddenly
costs,
we jump from to 2% on 800,000 is less than $20,000.
we get the maximum discount for version A. If we go with version B, we don't get those discounts, but we do shrink that 180 to 90, and we do keep our equity position. If you go with version C, as presented, you lose all that. But you get to bid this year. So if the time, that's why I went back to the timing of it, of the bidding. You know, the timing is important, and our position with LARM is important, and what you view LARM, our position with LARM, all that has to be figured in. It's a major decision.
Okay. What I was getting at, though, early on in this, I wrote it down here, 55,000. Where does the 55,000 develop from then?
We get
that's a hell of a lot more than 2%, and it's a hell of a lot more than...
We get retroacted, Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, but we get retroacted. LARM is committed to retroacting our premium, our discount this year, so we get an additional 3%. We got 2, you get 3, so it's approximately 25,000, and then 5% going forward if you commit to version A, the 180 days and the 3-year commitment.
Okay,
that's
the
where
3-year commitment. So
that's where that number comes from.
That's what I was getting at, because I was going, even 5% of 800,000 in it for a dummy like me still says it's only 40,000.
I'm with you, Jim. Sir.
Me now. Hi, my name is Ken Cox. I live at 16125 Cherry Circle in Bennington, Nebraska. I am the underwriter for EMC Insurance Company. I write the City of Kearney. I take exception to the councilman who said that we lied about premiums. The exhibits were put together to show, whereas if you look at a City of Norfolk exhibit that shows underwriting years this direction and premiums this direction, you're going to see it go like this. You're 300%. That was put together to show here's what our premium was year one. It went down year two because the city of Kearney chose to go, they wanted to self-insure, period. But they chose to go with a large deductible with us. We cut their premium 60%. They pay their losses up to $100,000 per loss, and then it's capped. I don't know what that aggregate cap is. But when you're talking about their budget, that may be the number that they've budgeted. That may not be the number that they pay. That could be at the top of their cap. It could be half of that. You don't know. So I take exception to being called a liar. If you want to look at apples for apples, what was Kearney's premium before EMC wrote it? Anybody know? It was about $900,000. EMC wrote it for $600,000. And if we were writing it today on a guaranteed cost based on the work comp, it'd still be close to that number.
Sir, 600,000 is the number that you wrote it for?
Around there. I'm talking round numbers.
I understand, around $600,000. Yes. Okay, well that's important to know because that's when we apply the premiums that JI, the third party, that's the same. We're getting to similar numbers then, so that's important to understand.
How large is Kearney versus Norfolk, though?
They're larger, and do you know what their loss ratio is?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Just 2000 census, I guess I don't have Kearney's on here, but Norfolk.
And sir, I'd like to clarify the fact that I was not calling you a liar at all. I did not stress that. I only expressed that Kearney's information given to you was incorrect.
I gave the information out.
The information that you received from Kearney was probably inadequate.
The information comes from EMC because we're the carrier. We write the coverage. I know exactly what those premiums are. They're not inaccurate.
I appreciate your clarification. I do.
The other thing, I don't understand what this equity is. Will the City of Norfolk ever get their equity? Is that a dollar amount of money that will ever be turned over to the city? I don't get it.
The City of Norfolk
totally full.
would get, if the dividend policy hadn't been changed, that equity would be a factor that would be used in calculating dividends. I don't believe that's important now, but that equity will probably remain in LARM. I think LARM's equity is about where it should be if we're going to be looking at lowering our premiums. So that equity's kind of an investment that I don't anticipate that we'll ever get back, but I do anticipate that going forward we'll earn a return on that equity through the underwriter's modifier every year, kind of like if you had a deposit in a bank that was a 100-year CD and it's going to return X percent a year. You're going to earn that every year. You may not get that money back in your hands, but you're going to be earning a return on that equity that is in LARM.
What's the return? You pay premium every year, the pool pays the losses. That's it. Whatever that premium is, you have to compare to the premiums that we charge.
Would it be fair to explain it as a 10-year discount? I mean, your years of commitment, you're getting a discount back for your years of commitment.
Yes,
it's not really the dollar amount that's that pertinent. It's the years of commitment, the years of participation.
Yeah,
the money is important because we're a bigger city. We have a higher percentage in there, but just for simplification,
our rates going forward will be lower because of that equity. We will not ever get a check written to us for $960,000 for that equity. It is a portion of that, unless something really changes where we decide, the LARM looks and says we don't need this $5 million of equity anymore, we can pay that down. Unless that happens and that equity's paid out in dividends, we will not see it. I believe that equity is probably going to be needed. It's probably going to stay there for the most part. There may be some small dividends paid out, but I believe for the most part, that equity is going to need to stay in LARM. But I believe we're going to be getting a benefit from that and reduce premiums from now as long as we have that equity, which could change if we had some large claims that would cause our premiums and share of expenses to eat into that equity. But yeah, I don't envision us getting a check for that equity.
Excuse me, Randy, those reduced premiums, and I'm going to go back to this again, just call me a hardhead, okay? The underwriter's modifier is what's going to be used to calculate from the equity position for the for the reduction in premium. Is that correct?
Correct. There'll be a set premium, the way I understand it, and then there'll be underwriter's modifiers either added to that if you have a higher than normal loss ratio and you don't have any equity in LARM, or taken off from that if your experience in Norfolk continues where you've got unusually low loss ratios and you've got a large portion of the equity. So that's how, you're exactly right.
Okay. And we've already determined that we don't know what that underwriter's modifier is going to be. I mean, nobody can tell us whether it should be 2% or 2.5% or 4%.
Yeah, I do not know.
Nobody has a good guess,
I do not
right?
know that.
Right. So we don't have a number. We don't know what the premiums are going to be. We don't have a number. And we don't have a number off the commercial side either, so.
Right. The best I've got is talking to J.I. I said, what do you think our underwriter's modifier is going to be?
Now we're getting somewhere. What did they say?
And that's the number I used when I was talking about our premiums coming down to be very competitive with Kearney's, was that 10% underwriter's modifier. And that's based on J.I.'s eyeballing it and saying that's what we think.
Okay, well, I didn't have any idea if it was going to be 2, 4, 10, whatever. If it's 10...
I would think now it would probably be relatively low because that money's being invested at relatively low rates of return.
All right.
My guess is that would change if the investment market went up, that the value of that equity should be worth more. I'm not sure if that's how it's going to work, but that's how I would envision it working.
So if the premium were $600,000 a year and we had a 5% modifier, we're talking about $30,000. Reduction off that 6.
Right.
Okay. All right. So, Shane, the difference between option B and option C, option B we would find out what that modifier is going forward in July or whenever. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We'll be with LARM. We'll know what our premiums are going to be next year, and we'll know, the proof will be in the pudding. We'll know if JI and LARM is true to what they've told the board and what the board recommended and adopted in earlier March, and we'll know what that number is, at least for that year. And then if we're either satisfied with that, we can say, well, we think that's pretty close. It's a gut check again, because you're not going to know private insurer's number,
right?
But it'll be a gut check for the council come next year about this time, saying, well, either that's good and we're satisfied with that number and the pool at that point with the lower premiums, or no, that's not good enough and let's go to bid. Then the 180-day window that we're dealing with this right now that causes us all the grief because of the timing, because no one can bid, that is gone, and it's down to a 90-day window.
So the penalty that we're going to get socked with is not as bad under B as it would be under C?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Why isn't it an option this year to make it 90 days? Who's stopping that? Instead of the 180 days.
The 90 days is in the interlocal agreement that created LARM.
That LARM, yeah.
180 days is something we've agreed to, this body has agreed to in the past, and all communities have agreed to.
So waive it this year. Why wait?
We don't have the ability here locally to waive that. That's a board
I thought you had all the ability to make those decisions locally.
You have the ability to recommend those decisions, and the rest of the board has to embrace it.
The other issue is, I hear about market's getting hard and you can't, or the pricing goes up too much, can the pool operate without reinsurance? No, they can't. And if the reinsurance market says that the price for E&O insurance goes up, your price goes up too. And can you guarantee that you'll have reinsurance forever? I can't guarantee my company's going to be here forever, but you can't guarantee that those reinsurers are going to be either.
No, I suppose you can't guarantee anything in this world other than we do have a voice on the board, and that's you have so much liability that you can take on as a pool, and so that's important for the council to consider. I don't, obviously, back in '85 when that gentleman over there, Councilman Brennan, was the chief of police in this city, he remembers clearly what that did for his sleepless nights with his officers. So I don't know if I can guarantee any of that, or anyone can guarantee it. But the pool was established to give that stability, and I don't want to rehash it all. But
I agree, Chief.
happened.
Yep. And I think it's time we move on. I really do. Sir, I appreciate your comments, certainly.
Just for clarification, it probably has no bearing, but Kearney in 2000 was about 9,000 more people than Norfolk.
Okay, thanks.
I looked on the internet.
Funny how that works, huh? All right, ex-councilman, 2 minutes.
Ivan Van Dyke, Norfolk, Nebraska, in 1905, Norfolk, Nebraska, at Madison Avenue. I wasn't going to say anything, but one of the things I think I have not heard here tonight is you are LARM, and if LARM decided July 1 to disband and close shop, I would understand you would get your equity, which is $923,000. So it's not like, if you insure with somebody else and you overpay your premiums, then that's paid to the stockholders or whoever. But you're literally paying yourself. It's still your money. Now, you may not get it back tomorrow, but if LARM would decide to disband, you're going to get your money back. Kearney, obviously, I don't know what they had for equity in there, but if they decide to, if LARM goes out of business, they're not going to get theirs back. So it's your company, literally. And so I don't see the situation about the money as such an issue, other than you're going to lose it if you get out of LARM.
So, Ivan, you're saying that if our insurance company goes belly up, we get a check?
No. Sure. If LARM goes out of business and says we're through, we aren't going to be in the business, they distribute the equity.
Hey, guys, let's go to really what the question is. Ivan, really, I appreciate it, but do we not agree? I mean, Jim?
Okay. One thing, that strikes me why option B or A appeal to me considerably more than version C is a few things that I've heard here this evening, and I've also seen divulged over the last 3 to 4 months. And that being one, we've got JI on board. I'd like to see, and I'd like them to have an opportunity to see, can they make the pudding that way? Can they do what they say? Is it going to happen? Are we going to see some of these things occur in that way? Will the private industry still be there in a year's time or in 3 years' time? Yeah, they're still going to be there that way. The other thing that struck me and still sticks in my mind is that pool insurance nationwide. I'm not going to talk about statewide. I want to talk nationwide, because we're more than just the state. Is 85% is the average. So even if that's off by 5%, it's still 80% participation in there. Sometimes we just don't always, we rear our backs a little bit, and some of the members in the state of Nebraska decide, well, that's not quite exactly for me. Don't do it when I feel good with where I'm at that way. Then I got just 2 other points. One thing that I heard it by one of the people that testified up here, was said that when profits are up, well, good point there. When profits are up, that's not profits that go to the city. That's profits that go to those people that are bankrolling the rest of that out there. those profits don't come back to us that way. So, and I lost my train of thought here. So, I mean, that's one thing that sticks with me. I think LARM is very viable. I think, that this, and not so much LARM as pool insurance is something that, when I hear people talk about, well, I do this with my house, I do this with my house, a municipality is a heck of a lot different than a house. In 30 years from now, I got a pretty good wager, and I think those guys that sell insurance say got a pretty good wager that I'm probably not going to be around here, or I'm going to be on the last leg. And so I really don't care about the insurance too much in 30 years from now. In 30 years from now, I suspect that the city of Norfolk is still going to be here, is still going to be a viable entity and growing and demanding of our children and our grandchildren to have made good decisions back at this point in time. And the last thing I want to mention, and Dave, I'm not picking on you, but bar charts in that they'll say what you want them to say. 300%. You went straightly dollars for dollars from 2000 to 2010 or 11.
10.
From 2000 to 2010, just a few of the things that we've added in that time period in there. I believe we added a fire department or a fire building. We added considerable number of employees. We added police people. We added a heck of a lot of things in that time period. So to present it to me just as a 300% increase over that time period isn't accurate. But that's the way it is with all statistics. And those guys that deal with statistics, which are the insurers, I mean, you make statistics say what you want them to say. So,
I just want to
with that being said, I
want to make one statement.
Okay.
I think I have the floor yet.
That's fine. Sorry, Jim.
With that being said, I will relinquish the floor.
All I want to say is, because it's been about 40 minutes since I made my last statement, but I don't see this as LARM versus private, and I'll guarantee you that September 16th, if we said, LARM, Pete, we want to come back, we think you're the best, I don't think they're going to turn their back on us and say, forget it, you guys go private. They'd take us back with open arms. All I'm asking is for the chance to look at facts instead of hypothetical situations, because that's all we've looked at in the 5 years I've been on here. Well, this is what they would do, and this is what they would do. This is going to show us the numbers, black and white, right in front of us, so we can make a good, viable decision as a board. That's all I have to say.
I just want to make one more long statement, too. Not to rebuttal you, Jim, but when we ran that police station and for the vote, we were talking about how that's going to help our insurance because it put another fire station on the other end of town, which would make our reaction time better. It was supposed to help our insurance. But you're right, a graph can do whatever it wants, but I've got the solid figures on that graph. It was 284 to 822. So that's all I'm going to say about graphs. The thing I'm going to say about this subject is I'm going to support C because I want to see what the numbers are, and that's all I want to do. If LARM comes in low, then we take LARM. But I cannot anymore explain to the citizens of Norfolk how our insurance is $300,000 to $400,000 higher than comparable cities, and where that money's going and why we're paying it and they're not. So I can't explain it because there is no answer that I know of why our insurance is $300,000 to $400,000 higher than some cities. So I have to vote for C so we can see if we can get a lower bid. The council 3 years ago made it so that we could come to this point. So Ivan and Carl were on that council. They voted to make it come to this point. I think we give them their due, and let's see what they got and see if anybody's lower. And if LARM's low, it answers the question. It's an easy question. Let's just see what everybody's got. And just like the bidding of the Memorial Field, if it's low, I'm not saying we have to go with low, but let's see what they got and see if they're close. That's all I'm going to say.
I have one other question I'd like to ask, and I guess I have to ask the people from JI. Under this option C, it says in here, termination of participation in LARM. Does that mean the LARM can bid or not?
Yes, we will bid, yes, sir. We can still bid, yes, sir. It's just terminating a relationship with this immediately at that day.
I'd like to
All right,
call
then.
the question.
All right, I'm ready for that too, except I'm a little confused on then A and B. B puts us out a year because, why?
It extends the interlocal agreement 1 year.
Extends the interlocal agreement 1 year and changes the date of notification from 180 to 90 days.
With no loss of equity, right?
Right.
Right, okay.
Because,
No
well, that's because we're still a member in there.
Right, okay, okay. Call the question. Who's not voting? I see. Push your little yes or no's or... Are they turned on? Okay.
Is there a motion on the floor?
Yes, there is a motion and a second.
C.
For C.
For C.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
This is C.
Voting in favor of version C, councilpersons Coy, Clausen, Faust. Voting against the motion, Lange, Merrill, Murin, Brenneman, Saunders. Motion fails.
Okay, that's for C.
For which?
I'm sorry.
C is failed.
C failed, right, okay. A or B,
Whichever gets,
right.
the motion gets made on.
I'd say we move on B, second.
A motion and a second that we approve version B. Further discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Voting in favor of version B, resolution 2011-3, councilpersons Coy, Merrill, Clausen, Murin, Brenneman. Voting against version B, Lange, Faust, and Saunders. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone, for the input and the patience. Moving on. We have a public hearing to consider submitting an application for $175,000 to the Nebraska Department of Economic Development for Community Development Block Grant for activities with the Community Revitalization Program. I will open the public hearing and look to whom speaking to this.
Holly Quinn with the Northeast Economic Development. The City of Norfolk is requesting $175,000 of Community Development Block Grant funds from the Nebraska Department of Economic Development for $133,000 for streets, $30,000 for commercial rehabilitation, and $12,000 for general administration. This is a one-to-one match on all activities except for the grant administration, and at least 50% of the funds will be provided to the City of Norfolk in the forms of streets, alleys, or commercial rehabilitation improvements in the targeted area. The total project cost is $339,200. The project will benefit at least 51% low to moderate income persons.
Okay. Any discussion at all? Anyone?
For a matter of clarification, this isn't a targeted area for the people that aren't privy to the information that we have. Can you kind of give us a general outline of what that targeted area is?
Oh, I'm a fill-in, so if I don't answer the complete questions, I'm sorry. In the application, and maybe somebody else, Beth, can answer this more than me, in the application it designates either streets or whatever that is actually LMI qualified, and I don't actually have the application with me that says what streets or alleys or what area is being.
Jim, because I was thinking that it was remembering a study which is about a 4-year study back now already.
I can kind of give you an idea where the targeted area we're dealing with now, I think, is like 1st Street to 7th Street, North Fork of the Elkhorn River to the South City limits. Okay. And, And that was what I thought it was. Well, there's a piece that we evidently get over to 13th Street in a part of that because one of our match areas is looking at working on Michigan Avenue between
Whatever you want to get me.
about 12th Street and 8th or 9th. Okay. So, but again, that was the area that I thought it was, but the primary area that we're going to be focusing on with using the money for two things is I think there's $30,000 for facade improvements in the downtown area, and then we're going to complete the alley reconstruction in the downtown area. So those are the targeted areas that we've got for the $175,000. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? This is a public hearing. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak? Seeing none. Holly, thank you for being here. Appreciate that. I will close the hearing and look for consideration of resolution number 2011-4, approving the grant.
Your Honor, I would introduce resolution 2011-4.
Second.
Motion with a second. If no further discussion, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative.
Next on the agenda, I would like a motion to adjourn as mayor and council so we can reconvene as a Board of Equalization.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor. Second.
Motion with a second. If you will please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative.
Okay, then as a Board of Equalization here, we are here for assessing of paving district number 493, the downtown improvements, paving district 501, Glen Street, and paving district 502, Walters East Knolls 10th edition. Is this a public hearing? Do I need to open it as a hearing?
No, it's the Board of Equalization is a hearing.
Okay.
Yes, it's a hearing.
Okay. All right.
Dennis.
Okay, Dennis, I'm looking to you.
Okay. And I think we need to take these
One at a time.
So we'll deal with paving district 493, which is the downtown
Okay.
area. The assessable costs are $1,342,400. General obligation costs are $637,000 in round numbers. Total costs of the project was $1,979,400. Of that assessable costs, there will be $640,000 of that will be paid by the vehicle parking district toward the assessments of those property owners that are in the vehicle parking district. So the net assessable amount that those property owners will see is $705,000. This project was brought to the city by the Vehicle Parking District Advisory Board as a spokesman for the downtown business people. The costs that you're seeing tonight do not include the median improvements that were paid for by the city of Norfolk completely. The general project was a third of the cost would be paid by the city of Norfolk with gas taxes. A third of the cost would be paid for by the Vehicle Parking District from their ad valorem taxes on the downtown business area, and the other third of the cost would be paid for by the property owners through special assessments, with each of those groups bringing their own financing. So that's why if you see the numbers and look at it and says 705,000 is more than 640, it's because of the financing component of the project. With that, I guess I would try to answer any questions that anyone might have from the council at this point in time, and then we'll need to have an opportunity for any affected property owners to ask questions or make comments.
Okay. Council, any questions, discussion?
So in essence, Dennis, what you just relayed was, especially on 493 down there, the assessable costs to the property owners are about a third of the actual cost of what it took to do the improvements down there, minus which, and not included in that is the island improvements. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay.
Dennis, when did this first go into committee for discussion?
Long time ago, 5 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe even a little longer than that.
I am,
The light pole, I know I was looking at some chart drawings on the light poles, and they were in 2008. So we were, I think 2004 might be when the cost estimate was put out. It's been a long process.
has it? Okay. I am not as familiar with this discussion as I certainly need to be. And I don't know whether it's proper or not, but I'm going to suggest we table this if we can, because I'm not as familiar with it as I need to be.
I would have
Is there
to
any,
join with that comment. Feel the same way. This is just presented to us. Basically, this is the first time I've seen this, and I don't feel like I'm in the position to make a recommendation.
Sure.
Couple of things here. First of all, the issue that's before you, we're in the public hearing portion of this at this point in time. So one of the things that when you get to the action item, if you want to take the action that you're suggesting about tabling, that might be appropriate at this point in time. One of the things that I think it's important for you to do here tonight is to go through the process, ask questions, allow that opportunity. There's people that have been sitting here that may have some interest in this for a number of hours, and the notice requirements for this are somewhat onerous and so on and so forth. So let that take its course, if you will, and then do what you will.
Clint, I appreciate that comment, and as I stated, I need to learn more about it, so my apologies if I thought I was going to cut you out of this deal. So let's,
no, and that,
all ears.
And I
You sat
would
through
like
the
to
last
also add that I've gotten a few phone calls on this deal, and I'd like to learn a little more too. Maybe even if we do table it, we have a subcommittee or somebody meet with these people to see more of their concerns so they are heard, but I think they should be.
Councilman Faust, I would agree with that. Certainly anyone that came down here tonight and sat through the last couple of hours deserves the opportunity to tell us what we need to hear. So
certainly. So we will look to you to come forward if you so choose. State your name for us and sign in. Okay. Okay. No, I think I'm okay.
My name is Mike Yost. I'm proprietor of Elkhorn Antiques at 714 West Norfolk Avenue. I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask, if I may. We kind of different where my family lives above our store, and we had some concerns about the design of the layout of our frontage. And the people that did this work were gracious enough to honor our request. One was we had such a slight incline that I didn't want a step there, and it was only just. But they said it was within codes that they just went straight down. They wanted to put a trash can in front of our store. Well, we have 3 small children that play out front there, and they get dirty enough without that thing, and besides, it would have been at an angle. They wanted to put some hand railings. Well, I think I counted 36 hand railings on the block, and I didn't think that was necessary to have 2 more there. So I was wondering, we are not members of the BID and or VPD, or so our tax or whatever our cost, I was wondering is anybody looked into that? If we had those hand railings projected into our cost and that trash can, they're not there. I was wondering if I'm paying for that. And my next question is also, how does the city expect payment? I mean, it's I think like $6,000 or something like that or better. I don't have that. Just wondering if they got a plan, or if I got to borrow the money to pay for all this. if there's anybody that can answer my question, I'd be grateful.
I'll answer your second question, Mike. This is Dennis.
Yes.
I'll answer your second question first. The special assessments are set up on a 10-year amortization program. So what will happen is that 1/10 of the principal amount is due 50 days after the special assessments are levied. The balance is due 1/10 each year, and interest at 6% on the unpaid balance. So the
say
the first year, if your assessment is $6,000, in 50 days you'll owe $600. A year from now you owe another $600 plus interest on $5,400.
Okay, now am I paying this interest because I haven't got this bill? I mean, it's been how many years has it taken? Am I paying interest on this now? I mean, when they put it out there, I thought, I only got 23 feet of frontage and $6,000 for concrete. I always said, well, I'm not going to say what I said, but I just think that is excessive, and I just wondering if you can't answer my question about the hand railings that were supposed to be there, the trash can. I mean, there's so many hand railings down there. It's unbelievable.
The project paid for the facilities that were incorporated into the project. So we paid for so many handrails, we paid for so many trash receptacles, we paid for so many benches. Those costs are reflected in here. And then those costs were equalized across all of the benefiting property owners from 1st Street to 8th Street by the amount of frontage each property has.
Did we get reimbursed for the 2 hand railings and the trash can I saved the city? I mean, I'm sure it's not that much, but I mean, it's, seems to be kind of a waste of material. Is there any way to find out about that, or is that just the other business owners? Did they pay for each of the hand railings and the trash cans and the benches in front of their stores? Or they just pay?
The entire cost of the benches, the trash cans, and the receptacles was divided based on front footage, whether you have a handrail directly in front of your property or a bench or a receptacle.
And how much was this per foot? I mean, like I say, 23 foot by, I thought $6,000. I thought, a couple cases of beer and a couple buckets of chicken, I could have got that done.
$275 a lineal foot was the assessable amount.
How much is that a square foot? I mean, somebody told me it was like ungodly amount.
Well, there's lots of things that went into that project besides just the concrete in front of your.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if I'm not a part of this BID or VPD, why should I have to pay for all that stuff? Why shouldn't I just be able to pay for the cost and the labor, whatever it was? I just thought $6,000 and some was excessive, and I don't know. All right.
I mean,
Sorry.
My name's Tim Woodhelm, and I'm actually here to represent my father. He owns property at 119 Norfolk Avenue. He's out of state right now, so he can't be here. And with the assessment of the concrete sidewalk that was put out, he doesn't have any issues with paying for it, but there are a few. He has actually 3 items where the concrete was not installed very well. The finish has come off, and it looks bad. It's degrading, and then there's an area where water actually can't drain away. There's an area between that building and the adjacent building that the water can't drain away very well because of the slope. So it's running down into the foundation and causing some problems with that. So with that, like I said, he doesn't have a problem paying the assessment, but would like to see those items fixed.
Tell me the address again.
119 Norfolk Avenue. And I've got, yes, or east. East. West is Stafford First Street. So.
Okay.
And I have pictures and things. You want that?
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Carl Reeder, we're actually right next to them. We're east of their building at 115 Norfolk Avenue. And I think there's an alley between the two buildings. Basically, it was a walkway at one point, and then they just boarded up one side of it, and there's actually a steel gate now. And what they did was the sidewalk, the actual sidewalk is probably 3 to 4 inches taller than that alleyway. And there's a drain in there, but it's not level. The old one's not level, so it just kind of goes into the corner of the foundation. So that was one question I had as well. The other thing would be on warranty, and Dennis, that's probably for you. What is the warranty on that sidewalk?
I believe it was 1 year from substantial completion.
So it's over. It's close.
It has gone by.
Okay. That was my other question. We've got, if you look at the sidewalk in front of my place and the one next to it, it's pitted pretty bad. And it really doesn't bother me. There's tracks in it. I really don't, it doesn't bother me a whole lot. I just don't want it to get worse. And so I guess that was a question I wanted to pose towards you guys. So I don't mind paying for it. I think it's been an amazing improvement to downtown. But we just want to make sure it holds up best it can. So.
Fair enough, Carl. Thank you. Anyone else that wants to come forward tonight? Okay. Seeing none now.
One question.
Sure.
Who overseen this project? Was the city or the SID?
You don't mean SID, you mean Vehicle Parking District? Okay.
Actually, it was the City of Norfolk bid and let project. The construction oversight was completed by JEO under contract with the city. And there are a couple representatives of JEO here this evening if you would have any specific questions for them.
All I would like to say is that we have that letter that Beth sent us today from one of the owners. We got 2 or 3 of them, I think. But the one, they state they're going to pay so much and no more. If you do have more meetings, I think that we should get those people there and find out what we can do with their concerns too. So it's on your emails today, and
right.
They sound pretty persistent. So if we do have subcommittee meetings, just try and get as many people there as we can to get some of these questions answered, if we could.
Okay, and as Councilman Faust has stated here, and Beth has provided me with, the 3 that came to us is a property owner at 127 West Norfolk Avenue with concerns, Melissa Nemec, from the CPM, which is signed by Bill Christian, property owner, and the other one is from TNT out of Fremont, Nebraska, signed by CJ Ty. So those will be recorded then as well. And certainly now we have a motion with a second on the floor. Did we have a second?
There is one more.
Well, there's 2 more.
From Melissa Nemec.
Yeah, I got that one. I did. I said that. We don't have a motion. Okay, all right.
We have 2 more. We have 2 more districts that we have to go through.
Well, do we want to do that, though, or are we going to act on these separately?
You need to. You need to complete all of your hearings, and then we can get out, and then we can go down the road of action items.
Okay. So that being said, let's take the next one, which is...
Well, we want to make sure that everybody's been heard. Let's just make sure one more.
Okay. Anyone else that wants to speak to this one? Sorry. I figured Carl was bringing up the rear for us there, so let's go on.
All right. The next district is paving district number 501. It's Glen Street down just off of Monroe Avenue. Accessible costs are $135,500. General obligation costs are $67,600 for a total cost of $203,080. would answer any questions anybody might have.
Okay, any comments to this one? Anyone that wants to come forward and speak to this issue? Council? You know, you guys have discussed tabling. Are we looking at
Well, it would be actions, and I'm not
Separately
sure,
apart, but-
that still comes after the public hearing, and each of them is addressed separately that way, so, you know,
Okay.
as in this one, I don't know that there's much I mean, these
Agreed.
generally are pretty nondescript
Right.
as they go along. It just so happens that 493 has
some
some,
issues? Okay,
might have some issues, whether they're issues of validity or whether they're issues of understanding.
okay, so that being said, anyone that wants,
I'd just add that this district, while it wasn't created by petition, it was as the result of an action brought to the city or brought to the city of Norfolk by property owners, and we had 2 or 3 meetings with those property owners, and we had a consensus from them that, yes, we want to move forward. And I think it was, if my recollection is correct, it was unanimous except for one property owner who basically said that, I'm not sure that I see the benefit, but all the rest of the property owners that are impacted by this are seeing it, and I'm going along. So,
okay. Any questions for Dennis or anyone that wants to comment on this? Right?
okay. Paving District 502 is Walters East Knolls 10th edition. Accessible costs are $118,360. General obligation is $16,800. Total cost is $135,200. This project is a result of a new subdivision and the subdivision agreement that was entered into between the city and the developer requesting city financing for the project.
Any further discussion on that one at all? Anyone that wants to speak to it? At all? Okay. All right, now, so, where am I?
You're okay.
Okay, so we're through all these.
Where am I?
No, he hasn't talked about,
Yeah, he just got
I
that.
just talked
Yeah.
about the last
Mhm.
paving
Yeah, pay
district.
attention here now.
I'm sorry.
Not quite all right.
If there's no more discussion.
All right.
Any comments?
So, at this point, we're ready to close the hearing, right?
So
And now-
I move we adjourn as a Board of Equalization and reconvene as a city council.
All right. Phew, you heard the motion in a second, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative.
Okay, so we're going to take these now, consideration of ordinance one by one. The one that we have a little discussion about here. Right. All right.
Your Honor, I'll introduce ordinance number 5152 on first reading.
Second that, Your Honor.
All right, we have a motion with a second. All right, Dennis, I just have one question to ask of you before we move forward on this. If, in fact, this is tabled, is there any consequences with us in the choice that we make? I mean,
Well, there is from the standpoint that the special assessments are all calculated this evening based on them being approved tonight. And there's an interest calculation that goes in there that goes from the time that the bills are actually paid up and through this evening.
okay.
So if we table this, technically, all of these special assessments need to be recalculated, and they will change by a few dollars. The other thing is that we're working through a state statute process that your job is to make sure that the special assessments or the cost for this project are fairly allocated to each of the property owners according to their benefit. So what we've taken is almost a $2 million project, and had an agreement on the front end that a third of the cost would be paid for by general city revenues, in this case gas tax. A third was going to be paid by the vehicle parking district through its taxing authority, and a third by special assessments. The third that's the special assessments have been allocated based on a front footage allocation. So we've taken the costs that were accessible and divided them by each person's frontage.
The one question that I need to ask as the non-member of the vehicle parking district, is there anything unique about that situation that is going to cause us to be able to relook at it? Does that make sense, what I'm asking? If Mr. Yost that stood up here and says, I am not, do we still have the right to assess him because he's not a part of the vehicle parking district that made the decision for those that are...
Okay, the other thing that happens in these special assessment districts is that when they are created, there's what's called a remonstrance period. So the creation ordinance is published in the paper 3 times, Beth? And they have 21 days to remonstrate against the district. And if you get 50% of the frontage that says we don't want that district, even though we've created it, it goes away. So there is on paving districts, there is the democratic process in that they have an opportunity to remonstrate against those districts. And yes, we do have the legal authority to assess Mr. Yost. And in fact, what we have done is we have assessed basically 2/3 of the cost to all those property owners, with a third of it going to be paid for by the vehicle parking district. And Mr. Yost and his neighbor knew going into this process that by not being a part of the vehicle parking district, that they would have a higher assessment.
Okay.
And in fact, we told them it was probably going to be the full assessment, all 3 pieces. But I don't think that would pass muster in that they are general taxpayers. So the third that was coming from the tax, we gave them that benefit.
Okay. And I appreciate that. I think that goes back to probably some clarification for, those that are a little new to this and myself as well, because I was having some of the same questions. I guess my point in saying this, is there any reason then to actually table, because there's nothing we're not going to be changing anything? I mean, I'm not saying that we don't need to sit down and talk more about what the Board of Equalization is about, et cetera, but really
I understand that there would be additional costs. Is there the possibility that we could add this onto the agenda for next Monday's meeting and give the people that wanted a chance to look at it? Because a majority of those people left thinking it was going to be tabled.
Yeah.
And now they left, and then they come back and read the paper tomorrow and say, oh, I guess they're not going to table it. So I guess what I'm suggesting is we table it, we readdress it next Monday at the special meeting. If there's a possibility, that's 7 days. And give those guys the opportunity to look it over more, whether they can adjust anything or not. We've led about 15 people to believe that it's going to be tabled.
I'm not sure what the notice requirements are on a special assessment if you don't go through.
Well, so it's 2 weeks.
I don't know if we're going to go back and redo.
Reset the hearing and go through the...
What? I don't know if you have to
I don't know.
redo the whole thing.
Is there any reason?
In which case, I would suggest that we move to the next 2 while Clint's looking. Or do you not want to do that, Clint?
Well, a couple of things. One of the questions the mayor asked is if you would approve it if you would approve it next week, can the city just eat the interest? I'm not sure what kinds of interest costs you have in there.
Delay of a week, Clint, I believe would cost about $420 in interest.
City?
Yeah.
The other one of the other options that I haven't thrown out there, since we're talking options, is if you pass it on first reading, I'm wondering if we take care of our any notice concerns.
That probably would do better on the notice concerns. You would still have the $400 worth of interest, and I will tell you, my staff can't do the notice and recalculate the assessments for $400.
The other part of this is that the issues that really were raised here, and I think one of the things, Dennis, that I had written down, and I think that one of the things that may have been missing from the discussion that you had is that at the time of the formation of the district, or at some point in time, was there a suggestion as to an estimate of the costs?
Yes, there was.
And where did that come?
Where did it come from, or what was it?
No. When in the process did that estimate occur?
That estimate occurred at the front end, many moons ago.
Before the remonstrance?
Before the remonstrance, yes.
So basically, and just as we're talking about this process, what happens is when you've got this proposed project, there's the discussion that talks about, and I don't exactly remember, but the notion would be that in the context of that, those people that are in the district are notified that their property is proposed to be involved in the district, and they're told that the contemplated cost for the improvements are, in this case, it's so much a running foot. Is that correct, Dennis?
They're informed, as in it's a public meeting, newspaper articles. We've talked about it for quite some time with the vehicle parking district and the elected officials, and we extended the district from 7th to 8th Street during that whole discussion. So there was lots of discussion. There wouldn't have been an individual notice sent to each property owner that says your assessment's going to be about this much. The ones that have property that is located outside of Madison County would have gotten a letter that says your property's going to be assessed. If the taxing address for your property is inside the city limits, probably even Madison County, your notice would have been through the paper and those types of things. But
yeah, otherwise you've got there's a separate notice provision in Chapter 13, Section 312 that provides people in Timbuktu that don't know anything about that discussion that's going on. You have to provide a notice to them that says you may be off in a sunnier climate, but this is what's being discussed back here. So,
and for, I guess, full disclosure, the estimated cost was $120, and the net is $143. So, it did go up some through that process, and that was basically reflected from the additional safety work we had to do on the backside and the interest, and the city also picked up a larger portion of the project.
I was going to say, at the time that original estimate was made that you talked about, Dennis, that didn't have that contemplated that the streetscape improvement in the medians was also going to be assessed, did it not?
That is correct.
And instead of that, you made some alterations.
That changed because when we bid the project the first time, the cost of the project was over the budget, and the Vehicle Parking District Board came to the elected officials and requested that the city take on the median portion of that project out of general taxpayers' dollars totally. So that was to help control the costs, and then we did some redesigns of the project. Counteracting that was the safety issues that we had to do on the backside, and then the interest costs, I think, were not accurately reflected in the first go-around.
We've had ordinance 5152
Introduced.
has been introduced and seconded. So,
Okay.
Okay. What we need to do is do it short time.
Right, okay.
And then maybe first reading.
Okay. Further discussion, council? What's your... Okay.
So the way we want to proceed is to pass it on the first reading?
Okay. We have a motion on the floor and a second. Okay, all right. Then we are in need of the short title, Beth.
An ordinance levying special assessments upon the lots, parts of lots, lands, and real estate abutting upon and adjacent to and specially benefited by the improvements in paving district number 493 of the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, to defray the costs of said improvements and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, any further discussion at all?
Now, they will be notified that we're going to talk about it again at whatever meeting, or no? They'll have to read the paper and see it's going to be? Okay.
Okay, ready to vote?
I'm sure we can count on the press to get that out.
It'd be nice if we could.
All right, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5152 carries on first reading.
Okay, and we'll move on then to ordinance number 5153, levying special assessments in paving district 501.
Your Honor, I would move approval of ordinance 5153 on first reading.
Second.
Motion with a second. Seeing no further discussion, short title, Beth.
Excuse me. An ordinance levying special assessments upon the lots, parts of lots, lands, and real estate abutting upon and adjacent to and specially benefited by the improvements in paving district number 501 of the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, to defray the cost of said improvements and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
If you will please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5153 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I would move that we consider this on second and third, and consider it on second and third, as there were no objections or discussions in objection to this paving district.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor to suspend second and third.
Second.
With a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5153 carries on second and third.
And finally, ordinance number 5154, levying special assessments in paving district 502.
54.
Did I say 50?
Oh.
You said pass on second, third?
Oh, 5153.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of ordinance 5154 on first reading.
Second.
Okay. Hearing no need for further discussion then, short title.
An ordinance levying special assessments upon the lots, parts of lots, lands, and real estate abutting upon and adjacent to and specially benefited by the improvements in paving district number 502 of the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, to defray the cost of said improvements and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And if you will please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5154 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass 5154 on second and third.
Second, Your Honor.
A motion with a second to suspend second and third reading. Hearing no further discussion, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5154 carries on second and third.
Okay. The regular agenda is asking for consideration of approval of a bid from Fairbanks Scales for the installation of one new truck scale at the transfer station for a total of $51,026, which was tabled at the February 22nd, 2011 council meeting. Do we need a motion to pull this from the table?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to pull it from the table.
Second that.
Okay. Motion with a second. Do we need to vote on this? I would assume. All right. Please vote. We'll pull it forward.
This vote is what?
We're to pull it off the table, Jim. I'm sorry. We tabled it. Yep.
So we can discuss it. All councilpersons voting in the affirmative.
Are you sure you do want to do this, huh? Here we go. All right. So I will open it up for some discussion. Who wants to lead this discussion tonight?
Go ahead.
That's all right. It's all right. Mr. Lund, you've been most patient tonight.
Thank you for waiting for me.
Oh, our pleasure.
The support document on this item's been rewritten after several meetings on the issue, and that's included in your packet. Following my recommendation for a scale, there's another discussion on a new part-time employee to do some accounting, some cash collection, so we can avoid the scale and hopefully speed that traffic. If you like that option, I would suggest trying that on Saturdays. During those busy Saturdays, typically 60% of the tickets are grass and brush. I would suggest maintaining Monday and Friday with the old method as kind of a base mark to see how you like that performance. And Fairbanks will hold that price on that scale through the summer. We could come back to you until somewhere around the end of July and make a decision before August. They would hold that through the summer, so we could reevaluate, get you some more information, maybe get you some pictures of what's going on, so you have a better comfort level of what's going on.
I appreciate that, Gary. I think that's...
I guess I just want to say that I appreciate all the work that you've done on this, Gary. We've kind of been involved probably over 2 years, so I sincerely want to tell you that I appreciate everything that you've done.
Thank you.
And I really am encouraged by his suggestion to try a part-time employee and see if that takes care of some of that peak traffic that we have at certain times. So Saturday morning would be a great place to start. I know Councilman Clausen had suggested even maybe one evening, but let's start with Saturday and see if that helps, and maybe we could attack a Wednesday evening and give individuals an opportunity that are working during the day to get out there and take advantage of this service that we offer to the public, because I think it's a great service.
I would also like to commend Gary for his patience, putting up with us younger councilmen, with greenhorns, and being able to work with us on this topic, because it's very important to you. I know that, and how it functions out there. I know I rarely use that with my business, and I appreciate your patience with us. Thank you.
Quite all right. Had to do it.
Yep. Okay.
Do we need a motion to accept his?
Well, I think what we need to do is probably, there's a motion on the table to approve with a second, so I would say that what I'm hearing is that we'll probably not approve that and look for Gary to move forward with his ideas and suggestions.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Mr. Miller, does it require that we table
I would
this so we can hold that
I
price?
have a question, a point of order,
Sure.
Clint and Mayor. Could we not table it if there's a possibility that would be approved later in the summer, or is that more appropriate than denying it, or no?
Well, as I think about it, the concern about denying it is that you don't want that interpreted as you've rejected the bid or whatever if you're trying to hold that open. And I don't know if you've got some letter or some verbal thing or whatever. I mean,
verbal agreement to hold the price until August.
We just table it.
I mean, you're basically out here where you're talking about a trust relationship with them. I don't know that it makes much difference. Do you have a preference, Gary?
I'd just as soon not have to rebid that if we had to, because Fairbanks is willing to hold the bid for us. Can you table it to a date certain in August or end of July or whatever you want to? So you don't have to have it on every meeting?
You don't wait.
We need to.
If you want to do that, rather than table it to a date certain, you never know what's going to happen at that point in time, just
table it.
And then it doesn't need to, you can remove it. What happens is the council can remove it from the table at any time according to the procedural rules. The problem with that is you can't comply with the open meetings law by putting it on the agenda So that's why you put it on the agenda, is to comply with the open meetings law, and then you comply with your procedural rules to take it off the table. So just table it.
So if they table it,
just table it.
and it does not have to be on every council agenda between now and
No.
August, it can be up to Gary to put it back on prior to, so it meets the meeting requirements. I think that'd be great.
Okay. So,
I got a question, okay. If we table it in that interim or in that time period, are we going to get that in writing from Fairbanks? And I appreciate your negotiability with them, because things that I see and have seen since February to now and continue through March and projections into April, steel is not staying stable. So I would like to see nothing else that in writing.
We'll get that.
okay. Thanks again, Gary.
So I'll make a motion to table. Second. Well, wait, we got to vote on the first one. I rescind that, sorry.
Just withdraw the motion?
Withdraw. Ask whoever moved and seconded it.
Who moved?
I might have moved, and I will rescind that.
That's very much appreciated, Councilman Faust. And so that being rescinded, we're ready then for a new motion?
At this time, I'd make a motion to table,
All right.
on the condition that I didn't introduce it. I don't think so.
All right, there's a motion with a second to table the item before us now, approving the Fairbanks scale. If you will please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, motion to table carries.
Okay, and this is the evening in which we look for any public comments that might be out there. So if anyone wants to come forward and speak to this council, obviously no action can be taken, but we welcome anyone that wants to come forward. Seeing none, I'm going to look for a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Oh.
I did find this while we were here.
Yeah.
This is an article from
Jolt.
Grand Island Independent.
Oh, wait, this is from the city. This one's
And
free.
right here is the language.